Right. And here's our script.
Okay, thanks. I am calling this Back Bay Architectural Commission Violations Committee public meeting to order at 4:30 p.m. on January 14th, 2026. You can participate in this hearing by going to our Zoom meeting link in our agenda posted online at https://www.boston.gov/public-notices/165-00821 or by calling 301-715-8592 and entering ID number 161-484-8222. You can also submit written comments or questions to backbayac@boston.gov. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this hearing online. To ensure public access to deliberations of the Back Bay Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comments on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your comments to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comments will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. Okay, and we have the agenda.
Yep, here's our first agenda item. It's the violation at 72 Commonwealth Avenue.
Unapproved masonry repairs at the front facade. Do we have anyone from 72 Commonwealth here today? And is this a continuation from last time?
Yep, this is continued from last month.
Okay.
Peter, I think you're here.
Yes, so I'm representing the owner for 72 Commonwealth Avenue.
All right. And anyone else here from your
Vimali, I think thought he was going to join, but basically it's a stucco repair outside. There were some cracks in the existing stucco, so sealing that up and then painting the same color as below. And then we're in the process of obtaining a short form permit from ISD, and then we'll use the same color, the masonry red as below.
So Peter, the question that I had for you is the actual product that you're going to use for the stucco repair, because usually we approve products like Mimic and Tamscoat. And then regarding the color, we want to make sure that the color is matching the actual original stone. And I believe that would probably be the brown color that you see at the first story. So I think we're going to need some confirmation and probably an on-site review of the actual color that you're going to propose.
Okay, yeah, we could do it. So the repairs you can see was the actual sealing of the stucco has already been taken. I guess in terms of product choice, I think the owner is open to using other products, but the kind of gaps have already been sealed. So I don't know if that's acceptable. In terms of the painting itself, yeah, absolutely. We can grab samples to match to match the color below.
Do you know what was used? What product was used on there now?
My guess is, well, so I was brought on when the repair has already been done. So the repair has already been undertaken. It's the existing. It's not as if no new architecture features were added. Yeah, I see someone with his hands up.
That's for later.
And
Okay.
Peter, the product that was used to seal the cracks in the masonry will be covered by the paint. Is that
Yes.
correct? So if that's the case, and I know that Joe likes to approve the products, but I think you need to apply to the commission for when you actually select a color that you're going to use.
Okay.
My question here, Rob, is all the other brick painted, or is all the other brick
It's
just
just,
brick.
that's a sealer. He put a sealer over it.
Yep.
And that's why the sealer was left there and not
Yeah.
painted. So that color looks like, so Benjamin Moore makes a historic color that we've used in the past. It's called HC 69 or historic color 69. That's the color that I think is on that building right now. Tom might comment on this. But you know, whatever you do, that you're not going to get a short form permit from ISD to do this work unless you have approval from your commission. So you can't put the cart before the horse. So get approval from the commission for the color, and then you'll be able to get the permit.
Yeah, of course. But we'll put in the permit application, and then it'll be pending while we get the get your approval. So we'll what I'll do is we'll get a sample of the color that closest matches the what's below, and then you know, I'll take your suggestion with the Benjamin Moore, the HC 69,
Yeah.
and then I'll send a photo to Joseph for approval. And then we'll be, yeah. We won't paint until we get the approval for this.
So I guess we should continue.
Do you want to move to comments first
Yeah.
before you do a motion?
I was going to say that, or you could, I mean, you could remand it to me, Rob.
Yeah.
And then I could bring it back, because I think what what I would like to do would be to go out and just look on site to match the color before we approve it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use a platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And I believe Sergey has his hand up.
Yes, thank you, Genia, and thank you, Commissioner Serge Savard, co-chair of the Architecture Committee of the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay. We did look at this. We did send a report to the Evaluation Committee last month. We didn't resend it the same this month, about the fact that also there was details that were basically changed or altered during this restoration that I think should be looked at, and maybe the staff, when they are on site, can look at this. But there's a number of cornice details that were removed. A number of string are not now continuous. There is significant details that were on this building that were basically removed or not appropriately restored, I would say. So I think part of the application should be not only for the paint, but to restore some of the details that were lost during that renovation. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other hands raised. So Rob, would you like to make your motion?
Yeah. So I guess my motion is to continue the violation with the understanding that the applicant will work with Joe to come up with a reasonable and approvable solution, and to remand the decision on this case to Joe and his office, to staff.
Probably note that they've got to get the paint color right, and as Savard just said,
Right.
about some of the details that they just kind of glossed over there, Rob.
Right. So all decisions regarding that will be remanded to staff.
Right.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Right. Gina Dimitriadis,
yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
and Rob Weintraub.
Yes.
Peter, did you have a question? Joe looks like he has a question.
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll work with the owner of the place to comply with the historic commission requirements, especially on the paint. For the to provide some context, did look at it before photos, and then some of the stucco, like this is what you see now. This is after the repair. Before if you look on Google Maps from 2022, 2023, a lot of the facing, like the layer on the brick was cracking and falling off. I so just let us know which detail you think is being modified, because the scope itself is just a simple resurfacing.
Yeah, Peter,
So
I think what we should do is schedule a time next week or soon after that you and I can meet, and whoever else from the
Sure.
property, and we
Yeah, I
can
think that'd be
take a
good.
look at what's missing. We want to be careful of all the details around the window surrounds, and also under the cornice as well.
Yeah, because if I recall, this did come up in the prior violations meeting about some of the detail going away.
It did. It definitely did.
You're
All right.
referring to this as stucco. Has the brownstone been stuccoed over?
Yeah, because it's not stucco.
The building was originally brownstone, and my photographs, it looks like it still is, but it could have been, stucco is a very good imitation, but do you know whether the stone is still there and or not?
Behind the brick.
There's no
The
brick.
behind
No.
us.
It's a stone, it's a brownstone front, or it was,
On the first floor there.
all the way up.
All the way up.
Oh, with the other stuff, yeah.
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 I mean,
So
I'm looking at my photo from, several years ago, makes it look like it's brownstone all the way up.
Yeah, so when you meet Mr. Sun on site, that's something to discuss. And if you feel that it needs to come back to the commission, it'll have to come back to the
Yeah, we can
commission.
always come back.
Yeah.
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, moving to the next violation, which is 416 Marlborough Street, unapproved lattice wood enclosure at Marlborough Street. Is anyone here from the property?
I'm going to report on this.
Okay.
The property manager was unable to come. He's on vacation, so I told him that I think I could report on this. And just to recap, this was the unapproved lattice enclosure and then mechanical equipment that is necessary for an emergency generator. And this was installed without the commission's review and approval. There was an electrical permit that was issued that didn't get flagged for my office's review. So this got installed without any review from the Back Bay Architectural Commission or our office. So this was continued from last month. And here's what the equipment looks like inside the enclosure. At last month's hearing, we decided that I would go out and Commissioner Weintraub would join me, and we would take a look inside the building to see if there are any locations where it could potentially be relocated. We met with the property manager and with the electrical or mechanical installer, and it turns out that there is code requirements that this equipment would have to be located outside, and they would have to get a variance to relocate it inside the building. So we did take a look. It's a complicated building. It's built out mostly to the lot line, so there's really no opportunity to locate any equipment along the alley side. This is Marlborough Street. This is about the location where the equipment is located. It seems like it might be possible to locate it in this room inside the building if they are able to get a variance. So where we left it, and I do have to say, we are actively working with this property management company. So, we do have an open line of communication. We were hoping that they would go back to ISD to see if it would be possible for them to get a variance to move the equipment indoors before exploring any options to move it outside. And this is what the room looks like inside. There will be a lot of work that will have to take place if it is able to be relocated inside the building. there likely will need to be 2 variances because there may not be enough clearance when the equipment is installed inside this room. But again, the first step is for them to go back to ISD to see if a variance
Yeah.
is going to be possible. So, Rob, did I miss anything in that?
No, I think I think you got it. I think there was a Matthew Lena or Lena wrote a letter, and I don't necessarily disagree with him. The equipment that's on the outside is much larger because it's exterior. The equipment that could be located on the inside with a variance will be much smaller. And the equipment that's on the outside is sitting on an 18-inch stand for snow on top of a 6-inch slab. So if it were to be relocated on the inside, those stands would go away as well as the slab. So there's plenty of room inside that electric room. But as Joe pointed out, the code does say that this equipment must be on the outside. I think the applicant could get a variance to relocate it on the inside with generator ports on the outside. So that if a truck had to be pulled up to run the building's emergency systems, the elevator and the pump for the sprinkler system, it would be able to plug in essentially just like a plug-in, you plug in your lamp into the building just above the granite, as opposed to having all this equipment on the outside. So I'm hoping that they can make that happen. And if not, then we discussed alternative locations for this equipment, lowering it and bringing it below the brownstone band on the outside to minimize its visual impact.
So I think, Rob, I think we were thinking we would continue this until we can get more feedback on their efforts to get a variance.
Right. So my motion is to continue this for 3 months because they're going to have to draw plans. They're going to have to get it before the inspector. He may reject it, in which case it'll go to the code review board. And if that's the case, it'll take more than 3 months. So they'd have to come back to us and apply for another extension.
Okay. Do we want to move to public comment first? I see a hand raised.
There you go. There's the script.
Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your comments to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And okay, I believe Matthew raised his hand. Would you please tell us your full name?
Matthew Lena. I don't know why it just says Matt H. It's been like that for years, and I've never been I have a degree in computer science, but I can't figure out how to change that. So I have a couple of comments. I'm pleased with the direction this seems to be going. I would be interested to hear, to learn what chapter and verse on this statement that this equipment is required to be outside. I'm very skeptical of that, but so I'd be interested to see where that requirement is stated. Second of all, the photograph that was shown, and I switched to the screen late, so maybe I missed one of the photographs. But the room that was shown there, that is certainly not the only electrical equipment room in that building. Clearly, that cannot be the service room and distribution room for the whole building. So I'm not convinced that that is the only space that there is for electrical equipment. Without question, that is just one of many rooms, several rooms that must be in that building, one of which must be quite large because it would have the entire electrical service, all the metering for the individual units, and so on. And there's also a separate fire pump room, which may or may not be able to be the home of the triple switch. I'm not sure of that, but I'm skeptical on that point. The final point I'd like to make is, well, actually, a third point is that, as I mentioned in earlier correspondence, the triple switch is really a package of several related things which meet this new code requirement. you know, and which are conveniently packaged in one place if you have room for that big package. But even if you don't have room for that one package, which, as I said in my correspondence, only takes up 35 inches of wall space, you can actually meet the same requirement with a number of smaller packages that are in various other places around the room or in different parts of the building, which together meet the requirement. So really, there's a lot of flexibility with how to do that. And if anyone's saying there isn't, there's something wrong. Finally,
Well, thank you. You're at your 2 minutes, and
Okay.
I did share your correspondence with the
All
committee.
right.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you.
Joe, let me just address his points. So you and I went there. We went through each of the utility rooms in the lower level of 416 Marlborough. You were right, there are more than one electric room. The electric room that we were in seemed to have the most space. The code calls for 42-inch clearance from the opening of the door into the next electrical piece of equipment. This room that you see here behind it, and you can see my jacket, there is a very large installation of electrical equipment, and there would be, depending upon the size of the equipment, there appears to be 42 inches of clearance between the door opening and the switchgear. So this is the only room that had the ability to have the 42-inch clearance. And if they get the variance, this would be the room to put it in. The second is the code. Joe put it up on the screen, the code that says that this gear has to be outside, hence the reason for the variance, which I think that they could probably get. That code goes back to 2013. So for those reasons, we're going to try and get the variance, or they're going to try and get the variance. And if they can't, we could minimize the profile of that equipment on the outside of the building, relocate it to minimize its visual profile.
Thanks, Rob. And then I believe Serge wanted to make a comment.
Yes, good evening again. Yes, that was one of my, actually, Rob was touching on one of my comments. If this solution doesn't work because the ISD doesn't want to give the, what was the plan and what would be the solution, because there was a discussion last time of a vault. I'm curious if that was also explored. And if not, what are the alternatives that are in case this solution, which looks attractive, to be honest, inside, but if that doesn't work, what are the options? Thank you.
And I'll comment on that too. And Joe, you can go back to the photo. There are 2 existing vaults there now, utility vaults. You can see one of them in this picture. There's one to the left of it. And those are easements that National Grid or Eversource has. Installing a third vault under where that equipment is also a possibility. So they're going to look into that as well and come back to us with a solution.
Yeah, there might be underground utilities there, though. I think
Yes,
that
that's
might
what
be
they were saying. So
an
it's
issue.
not likely. I don't know that the vault can go in that area, or it can go closer to the entrance of the building, but that's something that they can investigate as well.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other hands raised. So do you want to move back to your motion, Rob?
My motion is to continue this for 90 days to give the applicant a sufficient amount of time to research and get approval for alternative solutions.
Okay, thanks. Do we have a second? Did David drop off? If so, I'll second.
Second. Yeah, I'll second.
Okay. All right. Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and David Sampson.
Yes.
Okay, and then do we still have the third violation that was
Yes,
continued?
yes, yeah. That is
I said
Okay,
yes,
so-
Joe.
345
thank
Beacon
you.
Street, unapproved masonry work at front facade and unapproved removal of tree and landscape work at front garden. Again, this was continued from last month. And do we have anyone from 345 Beacon Street?
Yeah, I see Sharon's here, co-host. Let's see, is Ted here? Sharon, you should be able to mute
Hi.
yourself.
Hello.
Anyone else here from?
It's Ted and I are here.
Okay, is there anyone else I should?
Not that I know of, no.
Okay, all right. So just to recap, this was continued from last month. There was a large tree in the front garden that was removed. the front garden had pavers installed over it, and then there was masonry work taking place. Without all of this, without any review by the Back Bay Architectural Commission. And information was submitted to use a Thames coat repair for the front facade. I'd like to also take a look at the color choice to make sure the correct color is being used, but that's typically what's approved by the commission. They're proposing a ginkgo tree. I know there has been concerns about ginkgo trees. The female ginkgo trees often have fruit that are not very very pleasant in the fall. So that is something we may want to talk about and get some input from the garden club. But one concern I do have is the number of pavers that were installed in the front garden, and that's something that just typically isn't approved by the commission. So Sharon and Ted, would you like to make your comments?
Yeah, as far as the ginkgo, I did a bunch of research on that. I believe, I'm not positive, but I believe the one I was looking at was a male. But I'm not sure, but I'm 99% sure that's what I read. Because I reviewed all the different trees and I was looking at, you know, surface area for the root. The site guy had concerns that if I went with something that had a lot of width, that down the road, we may have an issue with deterioration of the pipe or the PVC. Whether that's true, I don't know. That's not my field, but he had concerns with that. So that also brings up the next topic that you were talking about. That's part of the reason why when we had this big trench, these trenches in the ground, we wanted to cover them. So there was already pavers there. If you look back at the pictures, you'll see that there were some red pavers around the perimeter. So we assumed that we could just, you know, put the pavers all the way through. We don't want to dig down far and interfere with the pipe. So we were talking about maybe we could, you know, find a landscaper to do something that would be, you know, maybe not so deep or not so, you know, more superficial. Or my wife came up with the idea of some planters in the area. But
obviously we're gonna dig up the pavers where we plant the tree, and around the tree have a little, you know, mulch or soil or something.
Yeah, I think the bigger issue is we don't allow pavers across the whole front yard, and that's what you have. So
yeah,
it's like
Right.
removing them would be more appropriate and either putting grass or something else.
yeah. The
So can we
question
keep-
is how much,
Right.
because it doesn't talk, I believe, about ratio on the plans. What percentage would you like removed? I did walk up and down Beacon and I saw a bunch of pavers in that garden area, you know, some more than others. So what would make you guys happy? Because obviously at the end of the day, we want to make everybody happy here. And we thought it, frankly, a lot of people walked by and said, we love the way it looks. But whatever you're looking for, let us know and we can, you know, get some kind of plan on adding mulch, adding a little grass, adding a little, you know,
I
some
think-
planters.
The best thing to do, and I think we mentioned this last time, have you worked with the Back Bay Garden Club on coming up with a solution to this?
We haven't
Yeah.
gotten that far. We've just been dealing with this basement leak. That's been our priority.
Well, we suggest you work with the Garden Club to come up with a plan, both hardscape and landscape, and to come back to the commission with a plan that not only the Garden Club but the Neighborhood Association of Back Bay would approve. So I'm afraid we're probably going to have to continue this, at least this part of the violation, until you come up with a reasonable, approvable solution.
Can you tell us how that works? Like, does someone come out or?
Contact the Garden Club.
Okay.
Back Bay Garden Club and work with them. There's probably some of them on this call right now.
Yeah, and Joe can give you the information as well,
Fine.
their contact
We'll give you
info.
information, and then, we continue this part of the violation until such time that you've had a chance to meet with them. And they'll give you excellent suggestions on what works best on that particular block on that side of Beacon Street.
Yeah, because people usually come back with an entire landscape plan, which we're
Right.
still missing here.
Uh-huh. Okay, so that's the first part. And then how about the Thames coat, taking a piece off the building and bringing it to
Keep it the same.
keep
color.
it the same color and bring it to that gentleman the sales rep. I put him on the his name was William Shea from QXO. He's the manager there, and him and I discussed how this has to happen, and we thought the best alternative was just to keep it the same color so we don't have run into any problems.
Yeah, that sounds appropriate to me at the staff level. I think I would just like to see the color before you go ahead and move forward with it, just so I'm clear it's going to match the original stone color.
Uh-huh.
It's fine.
I'm
So
ready.
we coordinate that with you.
Yes, you're coordinated with Joe.
Yeah. So I can get a painter to come out, pick up the paint, and then contact you, and he can start?
Well, I think, no, hold on. So we still have public comment and they haven't made their motion yet of how
Okay,
to move
okay.
forward. So let's move through this process and then we can talk about next steps.
Yeah, you
I'm ready.
can talk to Joe afterwards about
Yeah.
how to
I'm ready to
proceed.
make- I'm ready to make the motion.
Okay, so we have the script.
There you go.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use a platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And I believe Lori Thomas had her hand raised first. Lori?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Sharon and Ted, I'm Lori Thomas. I am a member of the Tree Committee of the Garden Club, and I'm also part of NAB Architecture Committee. I'm a co-chair there. I'd be delighted to work with you on this, but I do want to point out that you should work with an arborist and/or a professional landscape designer, because we're happy to consult with you, but we can't provide you with an entire garden design. And it sounds like that's what you need, as well as some tree consulting. I did have a question for you. Are you planning to put in an irrigation system for this new tree?
Haven't got that far. I haven't thought about it.
Okay, well, if you're putting a ginkgo in, and I don't recommend a ginkgo at all, you will definitely need one, because when those trees become stressed, and nurseries only sell male trees, but when they become stressed, and I have seen this with 4 or 5 trees in the neighborhood so far, they change gender to female trees, put out fruit, and become unbearable. They're not native trees. While they're very hardy, we've still had many of them die in the neighborhood because we have such bad drought conditions. And they're also very sterile trees. Birds don't like them, and they attract almost no species of insect, which is something you want your trees to do. So we'd be happy to consult with you and mention other trees that we think will protect your pipes, such as Japanese maples or Kousa dogwoods or crab apples that shouldn't have that effect. And we can give you a list of garden designers and arborists that you might want to consult with. So I'd be delighted to work with you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then I believe Serge has his hand up again.
Yes, good afternoon still. I'm curious about the repairs that were done and the patchwork that we see on the wall there. Do we know what was applied, and is this compatible with the Thames code that will be applied before, or is there further conditioning that will need to be redone, or actually removal that will need to be done? And Joe or the staff of the commission has taken a look of what that would require. So,
Right.
Are you asking us?
I
No.
believe so.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be working with them to make sure everything is compatible.
Perfect. Thank
Joe,
you.
Do you think 30 days extension on this violation is enough, or think we need more time?
I
to work
think
with
you
the
need
department?
60 if they're gonna get a landscape plan.
I think 60 is probably appropriate.
Yeah,
I don't see
Okay,
any other
so-
more, I don't see any more public comment.
right, so you can go back to Rob for his motion.
My motion is to continue this violation for a period of 60 days.
Second,
Okay,
Right, Gina Dimitriadis,
yes,
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and David Sampson.
yes.
All right,
Great.
great, thank you.
So does that include the paint and the
Yes.
whole, both parts?
Paint and landscaping. Hardscape.
okay. So I
Alright.
think that's it for violations, correct?
Yep, do you want to make a motion? Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Yes, we have a motion to adjourn, please.
Motion to adjourn.
I second,
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
yes.
So we will turn it over. I think Kathy is here. Make sure I can find her.
I don't know if I see her.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you?
Okay,
Sure.
yeah, I don't see her.
All right, I'll bring up the script. Okay.
Hi, my name is Jean Dimitriades, and I'm calling this Back Bay Architectural Commission public hearing to order at little past 5 on January 14th, 2026. You can participate in this hearing by going to our Zoom meeting link and our agenda posted online at https://www.boston.gov/public-notices/164-94251 or by calling 301-715-8592 and entering ID number 161-484-8222. You can also submit written comments or questions to backbayac@boston.gov. In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this hearing online. To ensure public access to the deliberations of the Back Bay Architectural Commission, the public may access this call through telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you are calling in and cannot use the platform, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which include landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside the commission's purview. And let's see, do we have our first?
Okay, let me just
You moving back?
bring that up. So the first order of business are the minutes, and I'll just say which commissioners are here. So we have
Okay.
Gina Dimitriadis, Tom High, Tom V. Nayer, David Sampson, Rob Weintraub, and Lisa Tharp.
Okay, so we have a quorum, right, with the 6?
Yes, yep. And I see Kathy's trying to join, so I just need to send her.
Okay.
So, but you can go ahead with the.
Okay, so can I have a motion to ratify the December 10th, 2025 public hearing minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay,
Right.
and
Gina Dimitriadis,
yes,
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom V. Nayer,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes,
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
okay,
Great. So project number 1 is 332 Newbury Street, master plan for signage. Is there anyone here to present? If you could raise your hand. Michael is here.
okay. They here or no?
Oh, I see him. Yeah, here he is.
Oh yeah, Mike Coates raised his hand.
Yep. Make him a co-host. All right, Mike, you should be able to unmute yourself.
And Joe, were you able to get Kathy?
Yeah, I sent her the link, so
Okay.
hopefully she's able to.
All right, and then do you want to read your public comments first, or your
Sure, yep.
comments first?
Comment. Just get to those. Okay, staff notes that 332 to 338 Newbury Street were originally constructed as stables in the late 19th century and converted into commercial use in the mid 20th century. Approval of a master plan will help streamline the review process for proposed signage and provide guidance for current and future tenants. Let's get to my recommendation. Staff recommends approval with provisos, finding that the proposed signage is reasonable with the exception of proposed signage above the first story, specifically the proposed blade signs at the second and third stories of 338 Newbury Street. I do want to mention that the sign code Article 11 is going to be revised and updated. The idea is it's going to hopefully streamline the process for the approval of signage across the city. It sounds like what will happen, all signage applications will first go to ISD for review for zoning compliance, and then they'll come to the different district commissions for review. So, Mike, I have your presentation here. If you just want to let me know when to move forward, and if you could just introduce yourself.
That'd be great. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for having us on the agenda this evening and meeting last week. For the people that were involved in last week's review, it was helpful to differentiate some of the ideas and thoughts coming out of the gate here. Our main intent here is just to have a general guideline so that future tenants and or renewing tenants have a baseline guidance as to signage in the area, even though whether they're already existing or new to the Back Bay. We want to make sure that these tenants have some kind of guideline to begin their application process with. We understand that regardless of this approval, that all applications are individual for each tenant and that they'll go through the same process as they would any other time. We're just looking to assist them in this manner to make sure that they have some baseline, especially when it comes to our leasing team, to be able to provide prospective tenants with so that they understand what is generally approved or what is common to be approved, and that anything outside of these master plans would be on the tenant's sole timeline, cost, and review with this committee going forward if they were to step wildly out of those guidelines or even, step out of them within the approvals we're going for today to provide them that basis.
So, Mike, are you talking about the retail and the second floor, or just the retail?
It's actually all retail. So the second floor is retail as well too. It just entered through that common area of 332, 4, and 6, and that main area we had some focus on with this plan. So would it be applying to just retail here in that regard? And we're looking again to just kind of take the feedback of the plan we've provided, the feedback we had from last meeting, and just see if there's anything we'd like to adjust here tonight.
Right. Do you want to walk me through, maybe just point out which buildings we're looking at here, and then we can move on. I do want to say that Kathy Connor has joined us. Kathy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Yes, I have. Thank you very much. Sorry, there were technical difficulties.
So the screen view we have right now that's shared, and Joe, I'm not sure if the feedback PDF might even be a better slide to go to after this. You're looking from left to right at 332, where the
here we go.
Correct. 332 with the mostly newer looking brick there. 334, that smaller window there in the middle with a couple pink awnings. And if you divide that doorway just to the right of that, that's the remainder of 334. 336 is now going towards the right where the towers is and completes with that second small window on the right. And 338 is the taller 3-story building that has the corner that juts out there.
Trident.
Correct. Trident Booksellers, staple for a long time there.
Yeah. I think the first thing you should know is that blade signs are permissible up to 6 square feet. Is that correct, Joe, for the sign code?
Yes.
So blade signs, one per retailer. Sometimes we'll allow two under extreme circumstances, but so one blade sign per retailer is appropriate. And then a band sign over the window would also be appropriate in addition to or instead of the blade sign, but that would be on a case-by-case basis. No signs are allowed to be attached to the fence. A-frames are discouraged, but I believe they're permissible under the new sign code, or at least they were for a while. And that's all I have. No neon signs, right? And then second floor tenants, we discourage signage altogether.
And let me just say that I agree with Joe's recommendation on that. These are, yes, they were built as stables or carriage houses, but they were designed by notable architects. Snell and Gregerson designed the middle group, and Peabody and Stearns, what I'll call the Trident building. And putting blade signs above the first floor retail would really diminish the architecture of those buildings. And I have a question, and these blade signs are internally lit, or is that a common thing? I thought most blade signs were just signs without internal lighting.
There's both on Newbury.
Excuse me?
There's both on Newbury, internally lit.
Both, okay.
externally lit.
Not very many are lit up.
No.
And my question is, could someone, I'm not sure where that noise is coming from, but there's certainly a party going on. If someone could mute, that would be terrific. As far as the blade signs, what about a consideration? Because there seem to be so many retailers here of a directory of sorts that might be able to consolidate and still follow the guidelines.
Yeah.
Based on the photo that you're looking at now and the review we had last week, the original intent that with our first swing at this was the idea of what do you do with second and third floor tenants at 338 and with that tree. So we weren't going to do anything to adjust anything with the tree. So our first thought was, how high can we put this signage? And upon the review last week and getting that feedback, we did pivot. I think that was Kathleen that was just making that comment. We did pivot the concept towards a directory on that right-hand side. If you look at the commentary box that says level 3 tenant 4 channel letters, it would be to the right of that, not exceeding the height of that colored box. It would have some sort of 338 numbering on it, and then a directory that could be swapped in, swapped out with the same font, color, context, if it need be, in terms of having little blocks or little squares of signs that could go below that. So formally be more of a directory style, and that was a welcoming idea that we'd like to change this current plan that you're looking at and go towards that direction for 338 specifically.
Thank you.
We don't allow signage for second and third floor tenants. Is that correct, Joe?
They do exist, so we have had them, yes.
Have they been approved?
I can't think of examples off the top of my head.
I couldn't find any, but
Yeah.
existence doesn't mean approval.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah, we're not looking to pursue any second or third floor signage after we had the initial review last week. Us being new to this process, including myself and going through the first time here, we didn't know what to expect. So we just wanted to propose the idea and definitely didn't realize that was uncommon. And we are fully accepting to Kathleen's concept and I assume the rest of the board's concept here of a directory first level sign to address any second or third floor tenants.
Right.
What we could do, I was going to say, what we could do, we could continue this to come back and see a revision, or we could create a subcommittee maybe that could meet and, work this proposal through and come back to the commission.
But if it's done on a case-by-case basis, is it really necessary? I think what he's trying to do is give potential retail tenants in general a reasonable expectations of what they can get approved from the commission.
Mm-hmm.
So some of them might want a blade sign and a sign over their window. Some will just want one or the other and not both. So I'm not sure that's necessary other than the directory.
Yeah, I agree with Rob that, yeah, if we specify in the motion that no signage above the first floor, the rest will, I think, provide some good guidance, and it will still be coming to the staff or to the commission on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
I think one of the foundational pieces here too was just a location, even if that location is using the existing anchors or existing places on the building. That feedback was provided after last week as well too. So a prospective tenant would know, here's my space, here's my window, here's my sign location. And again, even if it's as simple as that part of the process, and if they're at 338, knowing they have directory viewage there for that space that we just talked about. We don't like to see signs on the side if you're doing just a banner sign or a sign above the first floor window for the lower level retail. So in this case, if you did a sign above that center window, as long as it was sized appropriately, it would be approved. But because it's a bay window, doing signs on either side of that facade sign would probably not be approved or be appropriate. So it's really a question if you get a blade sign and a banner sign together or one or the other. Generally, those will get approved. One or the other was the intent of the proposal here. It may seem a bit confusing and the coloring scheme and all that, but the idea was to provide them an option A or an option B, not a combined A and B, unless they wanted to go out on their own and try the board and see how you
exactly. So I think that's a reasonable expectation. You tell the retail tenant they can get a blade sign or a banner sign, but they can't get both. But there's a chance if they want to apply before the commission to get both, we have made exceptions under extenuating circumstances. We appreciate the feedback. So where do we go from here? Do you want us to do a revision number 2 here? I think it was Joseph, you were making that comment. We can make a revision of the plan, make it a
come
bit
back next month, maybe
as well too. And
I think that would be a good idea. Does that sound good to the commissioners?
I mean, you have the information, right?
It shouldn't take us long to turn this around, correct?
You have the information. I guess you just have to hand that off to your new tenant or current tenants to follow through with their own signage plan.
But I think, Joe, maybe he can come back to you with a revised version of this and the directory, and perhaps that could be something that could be handled.
Yep, that's fine. I'm happy to do that. Of course.
Yeah. All right. So we'll defer it to staff. So
okay.
I guess I'm ready to make a motion.
All right.
So Kathy, did you want to take over?
Thank you very much. I think I'm ready to take over. Thanks so much, Jeannie. I'm sorry about that technical difficulty. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Okay, so we're going to go to the public comments now. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use a platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. And Serge, I see that you have your hand up.
Serge, you should be able to mute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Me too. I have technical difficulties. Good evening, everyone. Serge Savard from the Neighborhood Association of the Back Bay, the Architecture Committee. We did have the conversation with the applicant here last week. We are in favor of the concept here, but we want to highlight and probably make absolutely clear that obviously this is a guidance to the tenants, and the tenants should still apply for an application when they're going to submit their final design to the commission that the staff and or the commission, in my mind, could be able to approve based on these guidelines. The other thing that we want to be that we wanted to highlight is some of the this. It would be a good thing to still have the review if there is a specific sign, especially on the Trident building, because there's a significant amount of ornaments on the bay, and depending on the sign where it's done, we want that to be appropriate for that building. Not that there cannot be any signs there, but we wouldn't want especially the attachment to the signs to destroy some of the ornaments. So that they need to be careful with new signs that would be applied there. That's our major comments for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Sue, how about you?
Yeah, just one thing that may have gotten lost in the shuffle is the question of signage on the fence. And I understand that is not allowed, because we had a long discussion at the committee about that versus sandwich boards, and I'm not sure we resolved it, but
I think that just died, Sue. You and I were on that subcommittee for.
Yeah, but what if I know they've got quite a few fence signs now at that address, and I'm wondering if those are allowed or not at this point.
I think Rob mentioned at the beginning that they were not allowed.
Okay, so that probably should be part of the discussion as well then. Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
As a part of this review too, we're looking to add this in to every existing lease as an amendment, and obviously use that as additional reinforcement to the tenants. Not that the obvious rules are not the obvious rules, that it just gives us a little bit more leverage on our end to enforce them and not only communicate better in terms of what their rules are with things along the fence, and to make sure the removal is swift and quick if somebody decides to put something out there to keep things looking clean.
So Joe, I have a question for you. Are they allowed or aren't they?
They're not allowed above the railing.
Okay.
Right.
And as far as below the railing, is there a particular size or materials that are allowed up to a certain point? Is there a measure that we have?
I don't believe we have a measurement. I know in some cases they've been allowed to be two-sided depending on where they're being placed on railings.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, any other public comment? I didn't see any, Joe. Should we go back to the motion?
My motion is to remand the master plan for these 3 or 4 buildings to staff, with the understanding that each individual commercial tenant or retail tenant must apply to the commission for approval, regardless of the master plan.
Second.
Rob, would you want to add a proviso that no signs may be installed above the first floor?
Right. Well, that would be part of their master plan, but yes, with the proviso that no signs be installed above the first floor.
Jeannie, you're still seconding that?
Yep, still seconding.
All right. So Kathy Connor?
Yes.
Gina Dimitriadis?
Yes.
Tom High?
Yes.
Tom V. Nair?
Yes.
David Sampson?
Yes.
Rob Weintraub?
Yes.
And Letha Tharp?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we move on to our next application? It's 302 Beacon Street, or is there someone here from 302 Beacon Street, please?
Good evening, Doug Mills for Marketone Architecture, and for our clients, Brett and Abby Gordon.
Great.
Wonderful. And so what we're going to do is we're going to turn it over to Joe so we can read the staff comments, and then the floor will be yours.
Staff notes that 302 Beacon Street was constructed as a single-family house in 1869 to 1870 and remodeled into its colonial revival style appearance, with its front entrance relocated to the lower level in 1932. In 2023, the commission approved relocating the entrance portico to the first floor, provided that the stone cladding below the first story windows would be replaced with brick matching the existing bricks at the front facade. The applicant is requesting retaining the existing stone cladding because of the difficulty finding matching brick. At the December 10th, 2025 hearing, the commission voted to continue the review of the application and requested that a mock-up of proposed brick be available on site for the review of staff and commissioners. On January 9th, 2026, a public meeting was held to review the mock-up with Commissioners Robert Weintraub and Commissioner Thomas High in attendance with staff. And I'll just give my recommendation. Staff recommends denying the request to retain the existing cast stone below the first story windows and installing the brick viewed during the January 9th, 2026 site visit. The molded section of cast stone below the window should be retained and brick should be replaced, the cast stone from the molded section of the cast stone to the level just below the entry door. So here is pretty much what the building looks like today, and we're talking about the cast stone below this window, which also there's a small sliver on this side of the door. Yeah, I think I have what I had. Here we go. Here is the mock-up of brick that we saw on site, and this is the molded piece of cast stone that we believe should remain in place, and we'll have brick below that to about this level here. Here's a close-up. So I don't know, Doug, if you had anything else to present other than what we had, what we got to see on site.
Not in terms of drawings, but I would like to just reiterate that our reasons for wanting to not do this brickwork have nothing to do with cost, has nothing to do with time. Our clients have bent over backwards to spend as much time as it takes and as much money as it takes, literally, to make this project impeccable from start to finish. Whether it's wood floor or the tile that we're putting in their bathroom or the HVAC system, every step of the way, they've insisted on impeccable quality. And we share their concern about the adjacency of this historic brick that exists on the facade right up against what would be brand new brick if we are made to proceed with this work. It's not an issue of we don't think that the design is appropriate. We're fine either way, but we do have a major concern, and our clients do too, with having brand new brick that is pretty close to the original in size and color, but it's not exactly the same. The mortar is pretty close, but it's not really the same color. And again, just in terms of the workmanship, it's really hard to match perfectly brickwork. I do understand that having the sill will help if we keep that continuous sill across there, so there'll be a break between the new and the old. But I just would like to just reiterate one more time for the cheap seats that we do really have a concern with this, and we hope that you'll reconsider and allow us to maintain the stonework that's in place currently. Thank you.
Let me just comment that, I share the philosophical concern, and that's why I think that if with the addition or the retention of the sill, assuming that you get the bricks as close or even closer than what the sample showed, especially the mortar, the insertion or the retention of the sill will fool your eye, if you will, so that you won't see the contrast between the old and the new brick. So I support the recommendation of keeping what we originally approved 3 times of the brick with the retention of the sill, so that there's a break that will mitigate any slight slight differentiation between the old brick and the new. I'd also suggest that you pursue further the possibility of getting used brick or using a mason who specializes in that. I think Rob mentioned there's somebody he has worked with who is amazingly good at matching brick.
It was a supplier.
Ah,
I think it was called Ferguson. But Tom and I looked at this on site, and I second Tom's comments. The mock-up that was presented is about as close a match as you get. I think this picture is a little deceiving, but Tom and I both agreed, as well as many of the other people that were there, that this is a very, very close match, and that if it's below the sill, it will any difference between the old brick and the new brick is mitigated by the division of the sill between the two, between the new and the old brick. So
I have a question.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
May I see the close-up of the comparison of the old and the new? So Doug, last we met, we had suggested that you source reclaimed brick, but you've called this new brick. Is this reclaimed brick an old brick, or is this new brick?
So this is new brick. I'm the architect, not the contractor, so I'm not the one actually in the field doing the work. So we can certainly, so I actually meant to make the point that despite the fact that the commission members seem to be okay with the sample, our client is not. So he has already insisted that we try and do better on the sample.
Yeah.
So as part of that process, I'll recommend that we get some reclaimed brick, and hopefully we can make a better match.
Yeah, I think that's a big problem, and I agree with your clients that I think we could do better. And also I believe that with the right mason, getting the mortar mixture, even if there's a little integral color introduced, you could be doing sampling with different amounts of color introduced into the mortar so that you can really get a close match. There also may be a small amount of even like a very thin wash over the brick, to perhaps even with a super diluted parge material, or even a mortar-like material that would get the brick almost literally like a dead replica to the current body that's there. I think with the right mason and with reclaimed bricks, you can get a match. And that is why I feel as strongly as others on the commission that it is a worthy goal to continue pursuing the brick as opposed to the cast stone below that sill. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was very eloquently said, and I happen to agree with you and Rob and Tom, and I think we've come up with some terrific solutions for you, Doug, and your team. Are there any other comments at all from the commissioners?
I could make a motion when the time comes.
Great. Okay. Shall we go to public comment? And sir, I'll get to you in just a moment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you can send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. And Serge, once again will come to you.
Yes, thank you. We do concur with the opinions that have been done right here by the commission on this one. Just a technicality, the drawing that was submitted didn't have the seal in the drawing, but we did discuss this on our committee, and we think that the seal is actually something that will minimize any discrepancy in the final texture of the brick. So it's actually good, and this seal is very decorative. So keeping that sill would be done, but maybe in the provisos of the resolution, we should mention that this is not exactly as previously approved, but now it would include the sill that was not previously there, that we think is an interesting element and a very decorative element of that building. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Joe, I didn't see any other hands. Are there any emails or comments?
No other comments.
All right, so Tom, we're going to go back to you.
Okay,
For your
building
motion.
off of Joe's language, move that the request to retain the existing cast stone below the first story window is denied, and improved is installation of brick with consideration of using reclaimed brick reclaimed brick. The installation of the brick to replace the cast stone from the molded section of cast stone below the window to the level just below the new store entry door. You'll recognize Joe's language from his staff recommendation.
Second,
Okay. I'll do the roll call. Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Gina Dimitriadis,
yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tomby Nayer,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. All right, Doug, we'll continue
All
to
right.
work with you.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next application, 463 Beacon Street. Is there anyone here from 463, please?
Stephen, are you here? If you could raise your hand. There are a couple of Stevens here, so I'm not sure which one. Again, if anyone is here to present on 463 Beacon Street, if you could raise your hand. See, Janet, are you here? I thought the property owner. All right, I think maybe Kathy, we move to the next. Let me bring
I think that's a great solution, Joe.
Okay.
There is a Janet on the call.
Yeah, she didn't respond. I thought she was.
Okay, so we'll move on to 192 Commonwealth Avenue. Is there someone here from 192 Commonwealth Avenue, please?
Natasha is here, so I'm going to make you a co-host.
Too late.
Oh. Okay, Natasha. You should be able to unmute yourself. If you could just give us your full name.
Sure. And I think my name is Natasha Spada from Studio Nay Architects. I think George Overhalser is also, he's the client.
Ah, okay, yeah.
So if you can bring him in, that would be great. Thank you.
Oops, I'm going to mute that person. All right.
Stephen
so
is come.
Good evening.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yep. So I'm just going to read my staff comments. Staff notes that 463 Beacon Street is a 5-story brick row house. Oh, wrong one.
Just gonna say. Good save,
It
Joe.
is, but we're not talking about that. Okay. 192 Commonwealth Avenue. Staff notes that 192 Commonwealth Avenue was built as an 8-story, 8-unit apartment building in 1926 to 1927 and designed by Bigelow and Wadsworth architects. The proposed work is that the roof altered 2 existing elevator machine rooms. Work includes installing 2 sets of metal stairs, installing a new entry door, and installing guardrails. Staff recommends approval, finding that the proposed alterations to the existing rooftop additions will only be minimally visible from the ground. So Natasha and George, I can just let me know when to move forward.
Sure. Go ahead, George.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. George Overholzer's my name. I'm a resident at 192 Commonwealth and responsible for our elevator modernization project. It's 100 years old and we have to modernize. And that involves making changes to the head houses. So I think I best pass it to Natasha for details.
Thank you, George. So this project is at as Joe mentioned, at Com Ave, and it's at the corner of Com and Exeter Street. And if we go to the next slide.
Oh, I think this is photo I took. So here you can see what you see from the mall.
Right.
And this is what you see from Newbury Street, this building here.
And so this is the corner of the two, just to show where it lands on the district. And then the next slide probably shows so the two head houses are existing. They have guardrails around them. They're set back from both Exeter Street and Com Ave. So as Joe mentioned, you can't really see them from the street level. So the idea is that as you modernize, we're adding 2 metal stairs for access to the roof, to the elevator machine room above, and a new door in one of them to be able to access it well. But so if you go to the next slide. Yeah. This is showing it from Exeter Street. So again, they're set back from both Com Ave and Exeter Street. And one is for the passenger, the one towards Com Ave, and the one in the back is a service. And so this is the view of the existing passenger elevator. And then the next one is the existing service elevator. And this is the current view from both. From Exeter and Newbury on the right, and on the left from Exeter and Com Ave. And so these are the floor plans of them. The bottom one is the roof floor plan, and then the top one is the machine room floor plan. As you can see, the stairs lead from the roof to the floor plan, and they're all inset from both streets. And so this is showing it in 3D. What in this case, the extra door, and the extra door is here because we're trying to minimize the stair. And that goes into the penthouse. And then this is for the passenger elevator. And then for the next one is the service elevator. Again, it's just going around to be able to get to the machine room. And so this is just kind of a section through it to show how far back both of them are in here. And then we did some views again to show the lack of visibility. So that's the next slide. So this is looking, again, this is from Com Ave and Exeter. And the next view, so it's almost, it's the current head house is the only thing you would see, and then, but very little. And then this is from Boylston and Exeter. And again, it's barely, if anything, visible. And so that's our presentation for today. So any questions?
Commissioners, any questions?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay. Let's go to the public comment then. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use a platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. Do we have any public comment? Serge, I see you.
Yes, we did review the location of the mock-up, and I can say that it's very hard. It's impossible to see it at the typical location that we would expect to see in the alley, the other side of the street. And we need to go far beyond Commonwealth Avenue on the northern side to see this. So we didn't have the architecture committee of NAB didn't have any concern about this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Okay, let's go back to the motion.
The motion is for approval as submitted.
Second,
Okay. Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Tom High,
yes.
Tomby Nayer,
Yes.
thank you. David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So I think we can go back to
To 463.
Beacon. Yeah, I think I see Stephen joined us.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha.
and the commission. Thanks.
Of course, thank you. Okay, so we're going to do 463 Beacon, and we have a gentleman here to do the presentation. Could you identify yourself, please?
Hi, this is Steve Heisrod. I'm with DH Architects, speaking for the owner of the building, 463
Great.
LLC, and Janet J. Sorry
Wonderful.
about,
Stephen, if you could hold for just a moment, Joe is going to read the staff notes, and then it'll be back to you.
Okay.
The proposed work changes to previously approved work on October 13th, 2021 and renewed on September 10th, 2025. That includes a front facade change design and configuration of previously approved 5th story wood windows and add additional opening, and at rear elevation enlarge openings for emergency egress requirements. Enlarge previously approved openings at the 5th floor to accommodate French doors and enlarge window openings below existing decorative arched windows. Staff notes that 463 Beacon Street is a 5-story brick row house built in 1887 to 1888 and designed by Edgar A.P. Newcomb, architect. Staff recommends approval with provisos, finding that, and you'll see in the plans, the transom windows shown on the upper story, the front facade penthouse, should be omitted. They weren't part of the original proposal, and that the alterations to the 2 rear decorative arched windows or eyebrow windows also be omitted, as these are original character defining features of the building and really quite unique for the district. So Stephen, just let me know when to move forward.
Okay. If we could, since we're oriented appropriately, if you could go to slide 6 directly.
This one here?
No, it's the one with the 2 elevations side by side. That one.
Okay.
So just to summarize the changes since the last approval, we have not installed, but designed or added an elevator to the project, which required us to adjust flooring levels. The location of the double door on the previous submittal, because we have to add a landing inside in front of that opening, we reconfigured the door access so that we could provide a small landing off to one side. We wanted to keep the window arrangements centered, so created 3 narrower openings. And then the 2 additional small windows are just to bring light into the sides of that unit. And that's the extent of those changes.
Let me, if I may, just ask, because this, the drawing on the left does not accurately reflect what was approved in 2021. In 2021, that top floor was not clad in copper and there were no windows. You are now proposing using copper cladding for the entire front and back of the top floor.
Yes, that was the intent.
That was a proviso of our decision at the time, and I just wanted to make sure that that was correct.
Okay, these original drawings, the drawing on the left was completed by Embark, and this, as I'm told, was the elevation that was submitted on the 23rd, or what was the date? The recent submittal.
Yeah, that was September, and that was just a renewal. So somehow someone snuck those in. So those are not allowed. So or
And those windows are totally inconsistent with what we would approve, and I agree completely with Joe that they should not be approved.
Okay, no, I think I would agree with you entirely. I was going based on what I thought had been approved at the last hearing.
Yeah,
So,
at the last hearing, there were 3 provisos. One was copper cladding, one was shrinking the size of the deck, and one was to show where the HVAC equipment was, to move it so it was less visible. And I think what you've got here accomplished at least 2 of those 2 of those objectives. I'm not sure about the deck.
this front deck was reduced in size in the last.
That was what the proviso provided. I don't think it has been.
Reduced in width or in depth from the.
It would be the depth from the front.
Okay.
But I was just reviewing what was decided at that meeting.
Okay. Forgive me for my not being completely up to speed on what was approved previously. So if there's anything else that comes along as we go through, please inform. So the upper 2 windows are gone. The high windows, they'll be removed. And then as the rest of it intact, is there any objection to the layout of the windows, the increase in size of the windows? Or should I just move on to the next alteration?
Are those windows, you've got lights in them, are they true divided lights?
They can be if they need be.
Good.
And the door system as well can also be
good.
True. If we could now move down to keep going, this one right here. The changes from the previous submittal, there was a drop in the sill of the dormer on the 5th floor. The original windows had a sill height of about 5 feet, which is not useful for egress. So an extension of the fire escape and a landing was placed outside those windows. In order to get more efficient egress, we wanted to create 3 door openings on that top section. And I added transom lights that were more in keeping with the original head height of the existing windows. And I extended the landing of the fire escape to include the entire dormer and allow for egress directly to that fire escape. There are 2 windows on the 2nd and 3rd floors. Can I point, or do I have to?
Are you talking about the arched windows?
No, well, why don't we do that now? The arch windows, we proposed dropping the sills and adding a unit below each of those, primarily to add light. And I guess from your initial comments, that is not a desirable inclusion.
Let me underscore that. I think this is a really unique, not unique perhaps, because there are some others with a similar configuration, but those windows are part of the original design, and I agree completely with Joe that they should be retained.
Okay, understood. I did walk up and down the neighborhood for a couple of days to try to find something similar, and it's difficult.
Yeah, there are a number, not a number, but there are some buildings where the flat side of the bay is entirely brick. Those are usually on the houses that face the south, the southern sun.
Right.
But the addition of these windows, I think these were probably added by the original owner. It was designed as a pair, but each owner owned the buildings. And I think this owner, who was an art collector, really wanted to have that with the light coming through it. They're really wonderful.
I mean, the windows themselves are quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, then the last change is along the right-hand facade, sort of behind the fire escape. There are two windows there that have sills that they don't meet egress requirements, and the bottom sash doesn't meet egress dimension. Because they sit behind the fire escape, I thought that we could increase the size to make them more safe without really changing the impact of the openings, the impact of enlarging the openings. So the three vertical windows, the two on second and third floor, will match the size of the first floor below. So there's more consistency in those opening sizes, but it's primarily just to create a more easily egressed window.
On your lower one, the lower one doesn't have a balcony or a platform for the fire escape. How would that work?
We could extend the platform along the wall. I know that nobody's real enthusiastic about putting more fire escape, but my original thought was that it is preferable to have an opening that you can actually get out of, even if you're waiting for a ladder to come and get you, than to not be able to get out of it at all. I mean, if there's objection to that, we can easily extend the landing at the bottom of the stairs or top of the stairs over to below that window. And those are in general, that's some of the changes that we're requesting.
So I just have a question.
Yeah.
You have a fire escape with a landing, and there's a window that's sufficient enough for somebody to get out of. The one you want to enlarge is the smaller one to the right of it. Is that not the same unit?
No, there is a separate unit there.
Behind the small window?
Yeah. It's a small, narrow unit.
Oh, okay. So you need the second means of egress?
Yes. I mean, right now we have a situation where the units on the upper levels on the front side of the building will have to access through some of the rear units with basically a passage door that's linked to the fire alarm, and it will automatically open doors so that we have access to the fire escape from other units. So in worst case scenario, that unit could proceed out to the hallway and into the adjacent unit to use the fire escape. Not ideal.
And this is what, a 10-unit building?
Say that again?
How many units is the building?
18.
Oh, okay.
It's a lodging house.
Yeah, it's a lodging house.
All right. That makes sense. Yeah.
And you'd be lowering these two windows within the existing jambs and heads, right?
Yes,
You just
so
lower
we
the bottom,
lower the sill
lower the sill, okay.
and width would remain the same.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Great. Let's move on to public comment. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9, raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. And Serge, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, a few comments. We did review this application in our committee. The applicant could not come to the meeting, but we had a chance to look at it, and we totally agree with the position of the commission regarding the arch windows in the back. We think that this is really a significant piece, and we agree also with the commission that the 2 windows that were not approved in the front are not appropriate. I would consider a few comments maybe would be a good idea in this proposal for the commission to, at least we would recommend that to repeat the provisos that were done before, because we are not sure, the penthouse is not currently covered in standing seam copper as was done, and that should be repeated. And also the footprint of the deck that was supposed to be reduced and remanded to staff. We couldn't find evidence of that. Maybe the staff can comment on this. And the third one was the mock-up of the HVAC, and we don't know either if that was done. The last comment that I would have quickly is regarding that window to be extended. If I look at the drawings that were given of the plan, the inside plan were provided in the October 21 submission. And for that apartment, that seems to be apartment 301, if I'm not mistaken, there is a door that makes the access towards the window just besides it, according to the plan. So I'm curious if there is really a need for egress, since there seems to be a door that reaches the apartment next door just to reach that window for egress. So I just want to see if something fundamental change in the floor plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. I didn't see anybody. Joe, do we have any emails?
No other comments.
Can I
Wonderful.
just ask, Kathy, before we get to the motion, can I
Yes,
ask
of course.
the applicant, do these plans that you're presenting indicate that the entire penthouse will be clad in standing seam copper?
Yes, they do.
Okay, because Serge is saying that he didn't see that on the plans, but if these plans say that, then we don't need a proviso.
Okay.
I noticed that there is a area marked for the location of the HVAC units. Joe, did you have a chance to look at that? Do we need to be?
That should be part of, I would reiterate that as a proviso.
Okay. And in terms of the size of the deck, I don't recall what the concern was about the size of the deck previously. Does anyone else recall? Joe,
there was an issue with the ladder in the front. I can take a look. I mean, you can make that a proviso that I compare the existing deck plan with what was previously approved to determine if it needs to be made anymore. I think the issue would be whether or not it would reduce its visibility any by making it smaller.
Yeah.
Would you like me to make these adjustments and send to you just for confirmation that all these things?
I think, yeah, what we would do, I think, is have Joe confirm. Okay, I'm ready, I guess. That the motion is approval with provisos that first, the proposed plate glass transom windows on the front top floor are denied. Second, that the 2 eyebrow windows with stained glass on the rear bay are to remain unaltered, that the sills or other existing the sills of other existing windows on the rear may be lowered to doors within the existing head and side jambs only if required in order to connect to fire escapes or balconies to comply with code requirements, egress requirements, that all windows and doors be with true divided lights, and that the existing deck proposal and HVAC proposal be reviewed by staff and remanded to staff for approval.
Second,
One amendment, just wood windows.
Oh, yes, wood windows. Yes, thank you.
accept that.
Hey, Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Gina Dimitriadis,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom B. Nayer,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Okay, great. Now, Gina, I think you have to leave. Is that correct?
I think she already left.
Nope, I'm still here. Yeah, I was going to leave in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
I do want to note that 192 Marlborough Street, that application was withdrawn. So we will be moving next to Clarendon Street. I'll bring that up here. And that's 263 Clarendon Street. I see two people have their hands raised. Mimi, are you with this application?
Yes.
Okay, I'll make you a co-host.
And Justin Hodge is going to actually kick us off.
Okay. And do you want to share your own screens? Would that be easier?
That would be terrific.
Okay, all right. I'll stop sharing in that way.
Actually, if you could give co-host ability to Alexander Porter.
Yeah, he
who's
should be a
actually with me.
co-host. He should be
Okay,
able to be a
great.
So I'll stop sharing.
My screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great.
Great. Should I get started, Joe?
Oh, sure. You know, let me just, I'm sorry, read my staff comments here. Okay, and this is 263 Clarendon Street, renovation of existing residential building to accommodate elementary educational use. Work includes replacement of all windows, at front facade reconstructing entry stoop to provide access to interior lift and creating an accessible entrance, at rear elevation replacing existing fence, demolishing existing addition and constructing a one-story addition, constructing egress stairs, enlarging rear window openings to provide access egress stairs, and at roof installing skylight and mechanical equipment. Staff notes that 263 Clarendon Street is a 4-story second empire style row house that was built in 1870. On January 8th, 2025, the commission held an advisory review for this project, which was well received. Staff recommends approval with provisos, finding that there is a precedent in this area of the district for creating an accessible entry at the front facade. At the rear, the proposed egress door at the mansard should be option 1, which replicates the design of the existing mansard windows. So I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. My name is Justin Hage. I'm head of school for the Learning Project. I'm just going to give a quick introduction of the project, and then I'll turn it over to Mimi Love, principal designer at UTL. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our school, the Learning Project is a small K-6 school founded in 1973 and located in 2 locations. So our main building is at 107 Marlborough Street, just around the corner from our project at 263 Clarendon. This is where we host grades 1 through 6, and our kindergarten currently is in the basement of the First Baptist Church, another block away at the corner of Clarendon and Com Ave. The Learning Project serves approximately 118 students per year, 60% of whom are from Back Bay and its contiguous neighborhoods, and the rest come to us from Greater Boston, most of whose parents work in the downtown area. Our project presented tonight is being done for the school's long-term sustainability in Back Bay. Over the past couple of years, we worked closely with local officials, NAB and BBAC on the steps to transition this building into school space. We're excited to speak with you all tonight regarding the exterior design features and alterations. Just for background and context, our project consists of a renovation of the building to house our kindergarten classroom, some much needed office space for administrators, and additional space for classroom programming. And with that, I will turn it over to Mimi.
Justin. All right, I'm going to walk you through the scope of work on the exterior, but just to give you, there's two overarching goals. One is to make the building accessible, and the second is to create a second means of egress for all of the occupants, just to meet code. So if we start on the diagram on the far left, number one, there's a new accessible entrance. We're going to focus in detail on all of these elements, so this is just a quick summary. Replacing all of the windows. So that is something that we'll talk about. Talk about the roof. We're going out of order in terms of the numbers, but just left to right. Talk about some roof updates, which I think are in positive compared to what equipment is there now. Changing the rear fence. It is, old and falling apart. And so that is just an improvement that we are replacing to improve that condition. There are doors that we have to add to the rear of the building. So you'll see along where we're proposing an egress stair, we have to increase the height of an existing window to create a door onto the new egress stair. Number two is highlighting a door that doesn't exist, and that's a door that allows access to the rear yard at that level. We talked about the additional stair. That is a new feature. There is an addition called out at number 6, which houses mechanical equipment. It replaces and reduces the size of an existing addition that's there. And then the mansard window that we're talking about that Joe Cornish mentioned, option 2 or option 1 is preferred. We submitted options just to know that there are choices, and your feedback is really critical to the success of this project. So we'll continue to review those as we go through these slides. But starting with a new accessible entrance, we on the left is the image of our existing condition where you can see there's a piano nobile where we have some stairs to get up to the main height of the building. We are dealing with that accessible condition by adding a lift on the interior, and therefore creating a similar situation to what you see at 275 Clarendon Street. This was recommended to us the last time we came to you as an advisory meeting. So we have, what we like about 275 is the proportion of the door remains, at a relative scale that's reasonable to the height of the entry. It has a solid transom above. We'll talk about a slight departure we have, and the very clean glass transom above, which we think is a nice element to fill in that, the stone entryway. So on the next slide, we did include 3 options. We would love to hear your feedback. Option on the number 1 has a door that's very similar in height. We're proposing a 9-foot door with a transom above, and then a clean glass light above that, similar to 275. You can see that we increase the height of the door in option 2, very similar. The side lights that we have are very similar to the example at 275 that you shared with us. And then the last option, number 3 on the right, includes a divided glass. These would be true divided lights at the door to create.
Excuse me, Mimi, for interrupting, but I don't see any new slides. All I see is the building. Is anybody else seeing just the building?
No, I'm seeing the entry conditions.
You have to go to Mimi's tab at the
Actually,
top.
yeah. Or it might say
David,
Alexander
so
Porter.
three front door
Or
options.
Alexander Porter. If you
Correct.
go to
Oh,
that
now I
tab.
see it. Now I
Yeah.
see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, please interrupt if there's any other issues.
David,
Would you
all the
like
good
to?
stuff is coming up.
would you like to talk about each option or each
I
element?
think that would be helpful. I think that would be helpful, and if then we could summarize at the end if we need to. So I think these are the three options that we have in this section. We have one more drawing where we're showing a rendered version of. We can go to the next slide of what we think. You know, our preferred option is one. We're open to your feedback, but this is what it would look like in terms of the rendering and how it would fit into that cast stone opening.
That upper transom is so huge. Have you, I know NABS in its comments talked about dividing it or putting a grill on it. Have you done any work on that? Because it makes the whole entry look much more modern than I think you really want.
We're open to studying that. We didn't do it because we didn't do that study. The comments that we received didn't allow us enough time to study it.
Sure.
But it would be nice to talk about what you're imagining in terms of divided lights. We heard a grill might be appropriate. We don't think a fanning would be appropriate as in the original condition because the shape of that transom is, you know, doesn't allow for that nice fan division that we're seeing. So are we talking like divided lights, like, you know, six divided panels, or would a grill be an appropriate way to move forward?
Yeah, I think that Tom is struggling with this whole idea. I'm confused. You're a private school. Does a private school get any exception to the guidelines over a condo association or a townhouse in Back Bay? Because adding this door and this entryway to an historic opening, I don't see it. Now I realize you have to have ADA you have to comply with ADA. That can be done through the rear, although the Architectural Access Board would probably have to give you a variance. Did you explore the idea of putting the lift on the back as opposed to the front?
Yeah, so that would require a variance.
Yeah.
For sure, that's not allowed.
Did you try and go for the variance? If the BBAC denies you this opening because you're altering an historic opening, chances are they will grant you a variance to have the lift on the back.
Yeah, we had this discussion with this group back in January of last year, and when we thought, based on the precedents that were shared with us at 275, and actually our neighbor to the left of us, I think it's 267, have this condition. We were under the impression that this was an acceptable direction as long as the architecture intent met your standards.
Right. That doesn't necessarily mean they did that with approval, or if they did, I'm not sure how it was granted. So you're going to not only install this new door and this new opening, but you're going to remove the existing brownstone stairs to put the lift in.
Correct.
And then you're going to get rid of that historic opening and that historic transom.
That does get removed.
I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I'm not too keen on this.
Yeah, we had a similar situation with the French Library, which is further down on Berkeley Street. And when we had the advisory review, we looked at that option, and that was more of a grill option, and you'd actually go into the entry. The steps still had to be removed, but you would turn to the left and there would be a lift going that way. But the commission looked at other examples closer to this building on Clarendon Street that had the same kind of treatment, and that was the direction that they were. Yeah, I don't remember if you were there or not.
I don't think any of those other units had a rear access, did they?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think the one that people are looking at was at what's Hale House, and I don't think it does have a rear access.
Right.
The other concern is that it's not only a variance for getting a lift to a lower level, because we're on public alley 423, that sidewalk isn't ample enough. We can't even, the sidewalk doesn't allow for accessibility width, and the cross slope is also a problem there. That it becomes a much bigger problem for us. So we're happy to look at ways to divide the transom light. We could do it by a grill with a metal component as shown in our, as our next door neighbor at 267 includes, or we can also look at divided lights if that.
Can you go back and show, do you have images of those? Because I don't think everyone got to see them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, if you could, yeah, maybe just go back a few because I think some people weren't able to see the beginning of the presentation.
Yeah,
I
here's
don't know if we have
275.
267 in this deck.
275 was an approved accessible entry that we were recommended to study. That's a few doors up. 267 is on our block, and they have a lower door as well that's at the face of the building. I don't have that slide in this deck, but everyone's familiar with the neighborhood. It is not accessible, but it's quite similar in its appearance.
And the reason I'm referencing that is because it does have a decorative grill, iron grill at the glass transom.
I'm kind of wrestling with this as well, and I think part of the issue is the I think the transom above the door is also, I was wondering why that was your preferred option, because it's introducing another rectangle at a different height than the side lights, like the door not being the same height as the side lights. I think if you go back to your 3 option drawing,
I think we are open to any of these directions. I think the height of the door at 10 feet seem, pretty tall. It does, it can be, we can make it, and it can be elegant in its proportion. We just thought that a 9-foot door would be more appropriate for.
David,
so you're saying that the accessibility cannot be handled in the back only, that in your view, we need a Clarendon Street entry solution.
Correct.
Yeah, I share Rob's strong hesitation, and I was equally hesitant about the changes that were approved at 300 Berkeley. The thing that in the advisory that to me was somewhat of a mitigating factor, if we can get a design which is acceptable, was the fact that 267 does have a street level door and large area above it. And these are 3 companion buildings. So there is some symmetry that's achieved from a streetscape standpoint. I would love to see us not have to destroy the original entry, but if that's necessary, I think with some additional work, you might be able to convince us that it's okay. But I would hate to see this as a precedent for other locations.
I think it would be a very tempting precedent, because I think this issue is, in a neighborhood where there's so many piano nobile steps up to the
Yes, you're
grand
right.
first floor. This is a precedent that I think will be referenced. And so I think it's important to look at as many options as we can for this change.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that, I think all things should be considered. Door height, side lights, whether side lights are helping or not. And then how many divisions above the door are required? Is there some some complement to the divided lights on the windows that makes sense. There just needs to be alignment, I think. And that's why I'm wondering about the side lights too, because on the one hand, they mimic what's there now with the fan transom. However, if we're eliminating the fan transom, which goes with those side lights, then we have to look to the other glazing on that facade for reference.
Yes.
Exactly. We haven't even talked about the fire.
And Joe, can you make a comment? You know, once again, I know you had proposed the egress door at the mansard as being an option one opportunity. Is there anything else you can add about that?
Oh, I don't think we've seen that yet, have we?
Yeah, we haven't seen that. That's coming up.
Okay, all right, great. Because I think that would be probably, since we're thinking about this, would the commissioners object to moving forward so we can see that?
That's a good idea. You might find inspiration.
Yes.
Yeah, and we're happy to iterate on other options
Mhm.
because we agree it's an important piece. So this is looking at the rear of the building. So what we're focusing on here are the exit points to the egress stair. And so you'll see that there's the very lowest level. It's a new opening centered on the bay or the bow. And then we have 3 door openings that are enlarged off to the right-hand side. And we're proposing, you know, a door with a transom above. We tried to look at some alignments with the adjacent windows. So that's what we're proposing for the brick portion of the building.
Mimi, did you explore an interior fire escape where a second means a second stairway on the inside of the building?
Yes, we did. We exhaustively explored that.
And
It
what was
takes
the
up
reason
so
for
much.
not having on the inside of the building like the rest of Back Bay?
Excuse me?
What was the reason for not having on the inside of the building?
So the building isn't large enough to accommodate a second stair, especially one that meets, you know, today's codes. Yeah, it's really, really invasive. We have to put in a new elevator and we have to have 2 stairs that meet today's code. So it is just too big to be accommodated and also meet their program requirements for the school.
Right. So it's a problem. I get it. And we've all been there. You got the 2 fire rated stairwells plus an elevator that takes up most of your building.
Yeah,
And
it's a 66-foot lot.
yeah, but it's really not, that's not our problem.
I know, I just, you know,
And more egregious in the front is the back. And I just don't see, I would love to do this. You know, I renovate brownstones all the time. I would love to put these exterior stairways on, but the guidelines really don't allow it. And you're doing a full building gut, right, to make this for institutional use. The installation of a second stairwell in the front is certainly feasible. And to add this external fire escape when you have the opportunity to put it on the inside, I just don't think it's appropriate.
Well, I think this was the preferred option when we met last year because they were proposing an enclosed stair, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and that was really a monster.
yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it took up a lot of space, but installing an exterior stair of this nature would set one hell of a precedent. And then you'll start to see it go all over Back Bay.
I'm curious a little bit, Mimi, did your group take into consideration these changes prior to buying the building?
I'm going to defer to Justin. We definitely, you know, went through a lot of review. We've met with NAB. We met with you all a year ago. We definitely went through many options to see if we can accommodate the stair in the footprint of the building. We did all of that due diligence, went through zoning, got it approved. we just cannot meet the programmatic needs of the school by adding this stair to the interior of the building. And so that was the
I'll just
reason
add
for.
that there was a structural compromise that we would make too many openings in the floor plate for the building to be structurally sound without really substantially rebuilding it out of steel on the interior. That would be a very invasive, kind of thing to the exterior envelope. So it wasn't really deemed, feasible from a structural perspective to open 60% of the floor plate.
Yeah, and Mimi, I know you said you would defer to me on that one. I do. It has been a long process. It's been a couple years that we've been working through this, and when we did come to the commission for an advisory meeting, we did share just kind of why that internal stair just didn't work, which is why we then presented the addition on the back, an enclosed addition, which was not. It didn't seem like that was the direction that the commission wanted to go, and they felt like the exterior stair was really the only option to make this work. And so that's the direction that we went here.
You know, as a real estate developer, it frequently doesn't work, but you make it work, and you take up very valuable square footage, and what you're left with is about the same size, if not smaller, than the 2 stairwells plus the elevator. I'm sorry, I just don't, I know it may not be financially feasible, but if we allow this, then we allow this for everybody, because it doesn't work for anybody, right? To have two stairwells plus an elevator, which
And
are
the lift.
300
And the lift,
feet
yeah.
each, 200 square feet each, or whatever it is. I mean, that takes up a substantial amount. It's very tough to make these small buildings work because of that. But the precedent that would be set by the installation of this exterior fire escape and then dropping all these historic sills to create door openings to access, I just don't see it. But I am only one voice.
Any other voices, commissioners? We'd like to add something.
We actually do have a lot more content. I don't know if we want to kind of continue going.
I can't quite hear.
Yeah, I think there's still more, there's much more of a presentation.
Yeah,
So
we
I
should
think
just
why don't
move
we go
forward.
through the presentation
Yeah.
and then we can circle back.
I think so. Great idea.
This is just an enlargement of that center door opening that we're adding at the lowest level. That's what we're showing. The door would be a full glass light, so you could see how it's represented here. And then this is referring to one of the recommendations that Joe mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. To get access to the new egress stair, we need to create an opening on the mansard. And so you'll see that the current mansard doesn't have an opening at that one, chamfer that you see there. It has 2 windows with a decorative cornice and some dentils, and we're proposing one option to add a third that mimics the detailing that's there to get access onto the egress stair. The door would have divided lights to blend in with the adjacent windows. We also showed another option where it would be just more minimal. It would just be a cutout, an opening that would then, hold back the shingles, the slate shingles, and we would have a door in that recess. And we have a rendering of that so you could see what that would look like. It would just be a more minimal approach.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
No.
Yeah,
So
option 1, if you're doing it, option 1 makes sense.
Yeah, and that would be acceptable to our team. We'd be happy to continue to develop this
You have a
detail.
rendering of option 1?
We don't.
Yeah, it would be helpful. Do you have photographs? I can't recall whether the presentation includes, I know that the advisory did, photographs of the current rear facade, and there's some structures back there and the fire escape and so forth. So we have the context of what you're changing. Because I know there was a lot of additions and fire escapes on the back of the building as it is.
Correct. Alexander, in this deck, do we have a full image of what's on the back?
I think this is the only image in this particular presentation that shows the rear. And I think, Tom, these are the, fire bridges that connect to the neighbor building. They're on every level currently.
There's also an addition in the back.
Correct. We're going to get to that addition.
Okay.
So if we keep going, maybe I think that was item number 6. So that might be rear fence. So if we just keep going in order, we'll get to that addition on the back. So this is just calling out the existing condition for the fence. You'll see that that lower portion is the fence that encloses the rear yard. There's also a door that gives access to the public, passageway with the steps that you're seeing, that lower image. We're proposing to replace it almost in kind. It would be a 6-foot, standard height wood fence. It would just be double-sided to be a little bit more durable and have vertical, a vertical orientation of the boards.
When you say 6 feet, is that the wood portion?
That is the wood portion.
So it's
That
on
would be the
top of a
highest
wall. It's on top of a wall?
Right. That's currently how it exists.
Yes, I know, but is part of your zoning review, did you get a variance for that? Because I think that makes it more than a 6-foot high fence.
Have an average grade analysis. So this area down here is considered a basement, and it's below the average grade.
Ah, okay.
Is there any way you can use those stairs or configure those stairs for your ADA access?
That's not our property, but
Oh.
Sorry.
but we did have, many, iterations of getting access from this area down to the lowest level to enter the building. So that would be, layers and layers of variances. We just don't think would be feasible to be able to convince the ADA board to allow us to do. Again, we have, the narrow sidewalk, we have a cross slope that does not meet, and then we're not allowing access at the main entrance to the building, or an accessible route into the main entrance of the building. So the exterior windows, we're proposing to replace them with true divided light windows. They would be wood. We've been looking at the same manufacturer that was used at 320 Marlborough Street. And so they would be painted black. They would be divided, true divided. They'd have beveled profiles to meet your standards. And then we wouldn't have to keep the storm windows, which I think would be a nice feature. Then we have the rear stair that we've already talked about. The rear stair has been minimized to meet, the dimensions required by code. It is a very simple structure. We are minimizing all the physical, vertical structure by cantilevering it off of the building, working really diligently with our structural engineer to remove as many vertical posts as we can. We're imagining that each of the corners of the fire stair have a small radius to minimize the impact and overall effect of the reading of the stair. Something we've been really studying. to show how we can minimize its overall, you know, size. And then if we look at the next slide, we have a little bit of a detail of how we imagine it being built. You'll see that it has vertical pickets that run past the stringer to make it a little bit more elegant. The risers, we are proposing that they would be a wire mesh shown in that example above. This is a stair that we have built, interior stair, something to have that light and transparency open through. And then the actual treads would be a crate stair similar to that precedent image to
Mimi.
also allow light through. Yep.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes.
I thought you were finished this. Do
No,
you
that's fine.
have a before elevation? So we could see the before and the recommended.
That would be very helpful.
Yeah, in this deck, I don't think we have that.
I recommend going forward that you always include before.
Okay.
So we can see side by side photography as well as drawings, so that it makes it much easier for all of us to be able to assess. Thank you.
Okay.
Lisa, I think you're absolutely right, because when this was presented in the advisory, I believe we did see that, and it put it in a better context. None of us like to see big outdoor fire escapes being added to buildings, but as I recall, the rear of this facade has a big fire escape and a large rear addition that's being eliminated. But my recollection may be wrong. I didn't call up the old deck.
Right, and is it all bridge fire escapes currently?
Correct.
To the neighbor, horizontals, because I'm very sensitive to Rob's point as well this evening, and I just thought it would be helpful to actually read the one paragraph, if I may, on fire escapes and fire balconies, which I know most of you all know this already, but I think it's just helpful to look at the wording. Fire escapes and fire balconies of the Back Bay guidelines. Installation of fire escapes and fire balconies on primary elevations is inappropriate. Fixed diagonal fire stairways are not allowed. Fire egress should be accomplished in the interior whenever possible. Exterior solutions shall be limited to secondary elevations. And I know this is technically a secondary elevation. And so I think there's a bit of room here for interpretation by the commission on these guidelines, because is fixed diagonal fire stairways not allowed on any elevation? And if someone has clarity on that, but it sounds like nothing on the primary elevation, it's inappropriate. And then separately, the diagonal fire stairways are not allowed. So I would appreciate if anyone else had a point of view, any of the other commissioners had any further clarity on that.
And in addition to that, a very good point, Lisa. Joe, would you have the original elevation that we could compare in the original? Do you have the deck handy that we could just kind of put that up on the screen? Okay.
No, but what I'm hearing though, I mean, I'm hearing that the commission would really like to see a lot more information. So it's sounding to me like this should be continued, but I think we should provide a good, clear list of what we want them to come back with if this is continued. So I think one thing, options for the transom treatment in the front, before and after renderings, or existing and proposed renderings of everything. Anything else? I mean, what else is there? I think in the presentation, how far are we along in the presentation? Because I think you still have some rooftop.
I think the rear addition is something that we want to make sure that we get some initial feedback, and we may need to come back with.
Yeah, so I think what we're looking at is, continuing this to next month or a future hearing when you have more information. So I think commissioners, you should be thinking about what you'd like to see when they come back to help make a good decision here.
I think Lisa made an excellent point. Always having the side by sides. It's such a wonderful tool for us because it keeps everything in perspective, Mimi. And it's one go-to, and then we can evaluate forward. It takes a lot more time if we have to imagine And it's not the way we like to do it. So I think that was an invaluable piece that Lisa included.
Yeah, happy to do so. So, and you know, we could easily make these decisions. We're just also trying not to make this slide presentation too in depth, but we will be very judicious with just having the side by side the next time.
Well, it's such an important building also, and there's so much to be done. We want to make sure we take the time to do it the right way, but I think there's a logical way to present it. Tom, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, here you have a side by side, existing of the existing addition and the proposed alternative. So I think it shows the value of that.
But
Yes,
even
well
here,
said.
Tom, if I may, even here, existing condition drawings, so we can look at side-by-side photos and drawings is really very important, because a lot of times we'll pick up proportion inconsistencies or any other various topics that are important, and you know, preserving precedent is really a key part of the job. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other comments, commissioners, as far as things you'd like to see? Just to streamline the process and aid us in our decision-making process?
I think offline, I think we should talk as a group about the specificity of the guideline.
You can't talk offline. Sorry.
No,
Everything-
I'm sorry.
No, everything has to be in a open public meeting. So there's no
Sorry, my
talking offline.
bad language. I think any clarity that we can get on the guidelines, because I do find the wording, the specific wording on this point in the guidelines leaves a bit of vagueness that can be interpreted differently at different projects.
I have a suggestion, seeing as that is going to get continued in one form or another, that we form a subcommittee for this, because there's
a great idea.
too many.
There you go. That's great.
And it's not going to get resolved in one meeting, and I don't think it's going to get resolved in 2 meetings. So I suggest we form a subcommittee.
I think that's a great idea.
Agree.
Yeah, and I think that would be excellent. We're happy to, you know, really drill down on all of the details, come with more information. I do think a subcommittee dedicated to this is probably going to be very productive, because I imagine our conversations are going to take time.
So my question, Joe, is shall we then just move forward and say, okay, let's form a subcommittee and have someone make a motion, or should we, is it necessary to follow through the rest of the deck this evening?
No, I think I'm hearing, someone wants to make a motion to appoint a subcommittee or create a subcommittee that will meet with the applicant to further review the project and then reconvene with the full commission. You know, I think it would be helpful to have public comment just quickly. I would recommend no more than 3 for the subcommittee, but that being said, anyone is welcome to join and participate, but it's just hard to get quorums together. So I would just recommend a subcommittee of 3, and people can volunteer for that. Or
so would the motion be a denial?
No. I think it would be
continue.
It would be continuing. I would say continue the application, or let me see, create a subcommittee to continue the review of the application, to return to the full commission for, final review and approval.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Great. So we go to public comment then. Serge, I see, looks like I can't call on you yet, but I'm waiting for my little script and I
was going to say, go ahead and then I'll bring the script up. So by the time I get there.
Okay.
Oop.
All right. So just call on Serge. Is that what you're saying, Joe?
Yeah, Serge. Yep.
Okay, great, Serge. Serge, we're going to bring you on.
Thank you, Commissioner. We did review this proposal, and we had some concerns that the Commission has raised already, especially regarding the front door and the dormer and the size of the dormer. Regarding the, there is one element that was helping this design specifically, and it was 267s, which we don't have pictures here. As far as we can see, this door was modified, or at least it was in that condition since at least 1942. So it was previous to the commission, so probably it was definitely not approved by the commission, but that would have balanced the design. But we also think, we had also some concern about the design of the front door. Now regarding the interior and the design with the fire escape is obviously very obtrusive. There was some discussion last time at the advisory, but one of the things that was really missing in these plans compared to the previous one is there was detailed plan of the inside of why the constraint also was creating that. And I think if this is explored at the subcommittee, it will be better to have a better view of what exactly is doing, and having also people in the subcommittee that have done these kind of remodeling in the past would be beneficial. And I totally agree with the suggestion of Commissioner Weintraub for a subcommittee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Serge. Do you see anyone else, Joe?
No other comment. No other comments.
Then do I need to read the members of the little script there?
Yeah, just quickly, just so we're
okay.
playing by the rules.
I think that's important. Okay, members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. All righty. So we go back to the motion.
I'm not seeing anyone raising their hand, so we're good.
My motion is
Right.
to continue this application and for the commission to form a subcommittee of no less than 3 commissioners and no more than 5.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay.
Kathy Connor?
Yes.
I think Genia is gone, right? Genia's left. Genia has left.
Yes. Yeah.
Tom High?
Yes.
Tom Nair?
Yes.
David Sampson?
Yes.
Rob Weintraub?
Yes.
And Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
All right, so what I will do is I will send an email because we have a few commissioners who are absent. So I'll send an email for volunteers and maybe first come, first serve. So if I get more than 5, the first 5 that show up, does that sound fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Can I
Thanks,
just
everyone.
ask a question? Do
sure.
we meet out of sequence or do we meet monthly? What should we
No,
expect?
so there'll be public meetings, so we do have to schedule those, but they will be outside of this scheduled meeting process. So we'll find a time that's convenient for you and for the commissioners. And then I have to post those agendas 48 hours in advance. So, I think what we will do, we'll sort of have a first meeting and then we can decide how to proceed from there.
Excellent.
Joe, may I add one request
Sure.
for the presenters? Just next time, since we're referring to other precedents in the neighborhood, like 267, 275, or whatever I don't remember. If those images could also be included for reference, that would be very helpful, and perhaps any other rear fire stair
We have examples.
reference as well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback.
Great.
We look
Thank
forward
you.
to working
Thank
with
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we move forward to 32 Commonwealth Avenue? Is there someone here from 32 Commonwealth Avenue, please?
I think Guy Grassi, are you here? I think
I'm here.
Good. All right. Made you
Hi,
a
Guy.
co-host.
Hi, Guy.
How are you?
Good, thank you. And you know the drill, Guy, we're gonna have Joe go through the staff notes, then the floor will be yours.
Sure. Thank you.
32 Commonwealth Avenue will replace all existing 4th and 5th story windows with historically appropriate wood windows, and that roof replace rubber membrane roofing, reconfigure and enlarge decks, replace existing skylights with enlarged skylight, and relocate and add additional mechanical equipment and ventilation systems. Staff notes that 32 Commonwealth Avenue was one of 9 contiguous row houses designed by Gridley J.F. Bryant and Arthur D. Gilman between 1860 and 1861. Staff recommends approval, finding that the proposed work is consistent with the design guidelines for the residential area of the district and not visible from the middle of the Commonwealth Avenue Mall, which is consistent with the rooftop additions approved by the commission in the past. So, Guy, would you like to share your screen, or do you want me to go forward?
No, that'd be great if I could share.
Okay. I'm going to stop sharing so you can share your screen.
I think, can you see it now?
Yeah, we see the greatest hits.
We see the roof hatch.
See the roof hatch. All right, there we go. I don't know why it's crooked. Good evening. Thank you for hearing this. This is a smallish project. It's just to basically redo the roof deck and move the parts around up there and make it nicer. Replace the windows on the upper 2 floors. This is a condo unit owner that wants to do this work. It's a nice old house. There's currently a roof deck. You can see in the photograph there's a bulkhead. That bulkhead will remain. There's a railing system that we're going to replace, but it'll be in the same place in this corner. This is a view looking up towards the Commonwealth Mall, towards the east, from the roof of the house towards downtown. And this is, again, looking at the Commonwealth Mall. There's this sort of duck box here that's going to stay. And then some skylights up there, and the roof will get replaced. Again, this is basically as is. This is one of the AC units that exists. We're going to move them around a bit, and I'll show you a plan of all that. There's decks on all of these. This particular piece of the deck is going to get raised, so there aren't steps right here. And we've marked up that railing, and as Joe said, you can't see it from the center of the mall. This is just some of the equipment that's up there now. Some of the mechanical equipment, we're going to sort of consolidate it, put them in a box and clean it all up so it's not just a bunch of candy canes sticking up out of the roof and vents, random things. Just another photo of the roof deck that's up there and the neighbors. And again, same thing. This is looking towards the alley. You're seeing the roof of the church on Newbury Street on the other side of the alley. And this is a head house for the building next door. Just another view looking towards the mall from the back of the roof. You're seeing a skylight over that bulkhead, and then the hatch is on the other side. And this is the neighbor's deck on the right-hand side there. This is the front of the house. It's this the middle one. The proposal is to replace the 2 arched windows at the top with identical windows, and same thing with the pair below. There are currently no storm windows on the front. The other windows in the house are to remain. The beach ball of death. Hang on a sec. Oh, there it goes. This is a view of the back of the building. It's actually on the roof of a small L that's on the back, but it was easier to get a shot of the upper 2 floors where we're proposing to replace the windows. You can see there's these peculiar windows on the 4th floor. They're, I don't know, 16 by 16 sash, which I don't think I've ever seen. And that's kind of a Queen Anne thing. And then the upper floor is the 2 dormers. They do have storm windows on them. We would remove the storm windows and replace the double hungs with 2/2s, which is what's behind it. And then we would put 2/2s in the upper floors to match the 2/2.
And that's probably what was there originally.
Yeah, I'm sure. Right. And just another view of the back of the building. That's the L that exists on the back of this condominium. This is the existing roof plan on the left and the proposed roof plan on the right. So you can see what we've done with the deck. We've essentially widened it. It hasn't come any closer to the back or to the front. We've just sort of widened the whole deck. We've built a box on the right-hand side that will enclose, it's a copper clad box that'll enclose the vents, and then we'll have wall caps on that, so there won't be that whole cluster of candy canes and vents and pipes and ducts. We've relocated 2 of the air conditioning units so that they're alongside the bulkhead, sort of tucked in there, and then the third one is just forward of the deck. We've also mocked up that forward heat pump, or that forward AC unit, and it's not visible. It's actually behind that box that you saw earlier. And the only significant change, I guess, to the deck is we've infilled this area with deck. So there's a railing across there, and again, that's been mocked up. And that's pretty much it. Here's a cross section through the roof. There's a big skylight we're proposing in the back. It's a very narrow alley. You can't see it from any place. But again, that mock-up was built. I've got photos of the mock-up if you want to see it. And then the AC unit here, and then the new deck railing. We're proposing a slightly decorative railing system. It picks up on some details that happens in the metalwork on the front of the house. So there's a little bit of decorative metalwork, but it's still a fairly simple railing system. And then everything else, the chimneys and all that business remains. And then the elevations of the front and the back. And again, these are the double hung windows in the rear and the double hungs in the dormer, and then the arched windows in the front, and the 2 new 1/1s here, double hungs. And you can see the roof deck railing, and then the bulkhead, and then the roof deck railing actually on the back side is beyond, so it looks a little busier than it is. And then just the view from the back and the skylight. Again, you won't see the skylight from the street, but it's you know, it's there. And this is the detail on the railing. Again, it picks up on some of the metal work down below on the front of the house, and then the details of the windows. This is a skylight product that we're going to propose to use, and then just some details and some deck lighting. So it's the very low. We do these small step lights on some posts. They're about 12 inches off the deck, just so you can see your way around. They don't really provide a whole lot of light. And that's it.
Joe, did
Any
you?
questions, commissioners?
Joe, I looked at it from the center of the mall, the mock-up. I didn't get a chance to get around to the back. Did you look at the back to see if there's anything visible?
I did it. It's really tight in the back. You can't.
Yeah.
It's hard to see anything in the back.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been back there for 18 Commonwealth a lot.
Yes. Yep.
Any other comments, commissioners? Or questions?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Great job as
Terrific.
usual, Mr. Grassi.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to bring up the.
The script for me, and Serge will be with you in just a minute.
Right. Right, there you go.
Thank you. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. Serge.
Yeah, thank you. We did review this application, and we did look at the mock-ups. Nothing is visible, and the association doesn't have any reservation for this application. I'm just curious, there is a ventilator box that is not part of this application, but is existing, that is connected to one of the chimney in the front of the 32 Com Ave. And if that box is not in use anymore, it would be great if it could be removed, because that's the only piece of equipment that is actually visible from the mall. But it's existing, there's no debate, but I'm curious if this is in operation and needed, or if it could be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. I don't see anyone else. Joe, do you?
No other comments.
Okay, great. Then shall we go back to the motion?
The motion is for approval as submitted.
Second.
That was David. Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tommy Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And if we can, by the way, if we can get rid of this box, we'd love to. So I just don't know what it is.
Okay. All right, we're going to continue, Guy, to 285 Commonwealth Avenue. And if you want to wait one moment, Joe will do the staff comments.
Yeah, and Guy, I'll let you share your screen again. 285 Commonwealth Avenue, the proposed work is to replace all windows and clean, repair, and repoint masonry. At front facade, remove non-original lower level entrance and stairs and restore window opening. Remove existing window grill at lower level window. Restore and re-landscape front garden, including replacing existing tree, restoring existing curbing, and installing new fence. Install granite pavers at entry, walkway, replace intercom and repair repaint railings. At fifth floor, restore balustrade, install deck and railing, convert existing window opening into a door, and replace copper at mansard roof. At rear elevation, install brick pavers, brick wall, and new plantings at driveway and parking area. Install garage door, replace existing entry door, restore existing sconces and install sconces relocated from the front facade, and repair existing oriel window. And at roof, install mechanical equipment, skylight, deck, head house, rubber membrane roof, and a live roof. So a lot of work going on being proposed. Staff notes that 285 Commonwealth Avenue is a 4-story stone row house built between 1903 and 1904 and designed by Winslow and Bigelow architects. And staff recommends approval, finding that the proposed work is consistent with the commission's design guidelines for the residential area of the district, and that the proposed head house addition is not visible from the middle of the Commonwealth Avenue Mall, which is consistent with the rooftop additions approved by the commission. I will say you can see it from across the street on Commonwealth Avenue and further down the street on Commonwealth Avenue. So Guy, you can go ahead and share your screen.
Great. Thank you. This is a wonderful building. This is it's kind of an interesting story that that the house was built in 1872 or 1873 on spec and was sold a couple of years later and then torn down in 1903 and replaced with this classical revival building. It's really a wonderful house. In 1953, I think it was 1954, a doctor purchased it and installed a basement entrance in the front to access the doctor's office. It's not uncommon in the Back Bay, but obviously it wasn't original to the house. We also think that there was a bay added on the back of the building on the first floor on Oriole.
Yes, it was.
We have the original construction drawings and it doesn't show it. So somewhere along the line that was added. This is a photograph, obviously, from the mall. The 4-story house and the 5th floor set back with the copper work and the dormers and the balustrade up there. We're proposing to use this balustrade as our guardrail for a deck. We would have to put some metal railing behind it. It would be very delicate just to meet the code and wouldn't be any higher than the current stone balustrade. We'll do a full restoration of the whole facade and the usual stuff. But it's in really good shape to begin with. Here is the house again from just a different angle on the mall. You can see a bit of the exposed party wall on the sides here and the very tall chimneys. The beautiful front entrance. Again, all that's to remain. I'm not sure what this junk is, but it's just there. It'll be gone. Beautiful balconies, and the ironwork will restore the doors and replace the intercom. You can see the existing intercom that's here. It'll be much smaller and simpler in brass. The stairs would remain. The handrails would remain. We would repair them. This is the stair that was installed. It was nicely done for what it is. It's not bad. Our proposal is to restore all of this and put back the stonework and cut stone to match and infill it again. The light would go away, obviously. I think we proposed to remove this grill and not have one on this window. We could also replicate this and put it on that window if that's preferable. It's an interesting grill. I don't know if it was original or not. I'd be surprised if it was original, but it's also creating some problems with the stonework. We would take out the retaining wall and backfill this whole thing and just make it a front yard again. Again, another photo of that recessed area well. This is the rear of the building. On both sides of us, there are parking areas ramped down. And this one actually ramps up slightly from the alley line, which is unusual. We would replace all that and ramp it down. Our proposal is to create a small brick enclosed garden back here, and then replace this door, get rid of the ironwork, and clean up that whole mess. There's a bunch of junk on the back of the building that would get replaced. The spotlight would come off, the surface wiring. All of this cabling is, I think, just servicing this building. There may be a cable that runs around, so we would bury that and bring it up if we had to. Interestingly, here is you've got a very large masonry opening. Our proposal is going to be to replace this metal covered lintel. I'm not quite sure what that is. I think it's steel behind it, and it has some kind of a metal cover over it. I don't know if that's original. The drawings show what looks like a stone lintel.
Yeah, the drawings show a stone lintel and that big an opening.
Yes,
with no masonry in between.
Right. So it's quite unusual.
Yeah.
So our proposal is to use that opening, drop the sill and make that a garage door. And then again, ramp down to get to it. So it'll be pretty much a similar slope to the driveways on both sides. And then we'll have a small garden in the center. This is the upper levels, just a replacement of the windows and a restoration. You can see the railing system back here. There is no deck towards the rear of the roof, but there was this pipe railing. I'm not sure why that was there. I don't think that was original either.
Can you move that downspout to the right or the left?
Pardon me?
Can you move the
downspout?
downspout that runs down the middle?
Yeah, we were replacing it so we can put it any place.
Put it off to the side, because it would make more sense if it was on the western side. So.
Yeah, it's peculiar that it's there. There is one next door right there. I think that is actually where it was though, because I think that's on the drawing. But
is it?
Yeah, I think it is. But anyway, it's you can see the telephone cables feeding here and then coming across. So, all that stuff. But you can see here where, this is raised above the driveway next door. This is the back door. So we're refurbishing some of this that might be original, some of the woodwork in the panel, replace the window, replace the door, and just kind of clean up the copper work and remove all the junk, hopefully buy fixtures that are a little bit nicer than that. Just an angled view again. This is 285 here, and this is the neighbor. There is a brick retaining wall right here, and some of that will remain, but not much because it's basically going to be a similar grade. This is looking down from the roof onto that balustrade out front. It needs a lot of restoration work. You can see some plates bolted on to hold it together. The joints have come apart. So it's essentially going to have to get taken apart and rebuilt. These struts were put in because it was probably moving. And the copper work all has to get replaced because it's gone. All these joints have been, covered over the roofing cement because it's probably been leaking for years. But we'll replace it with identical material. This is an existing penthouse that's up there now that will go away. And we're proposing a smaller head house off to the side here that will access the roof deck. And then obviously there's a nice parapet wall here, which is helpful to hide any decks that we build up here. The chimneys, of course, will remain. So this is once again the head house. We would take this out where the parapet has peaked up above this skylight, because that skylight goes away, and then just continue the parapet back. Again, same thing here. We'll get rid of the skylight. The new head house goes in this area, and this penthouse goes away. And then this is that railing. Our deck would come to the back side of the chimney, as per the guidelines. Same thing in the front. Just another view of what's up there. And again, just the kind of mess. All of this stuff has to get replaced. And that's about it. This fire escape remains. It services both buildings. So that will remain, or this connecting balcony, I should say. This is just an aerial photo. Helps you to understand what's next door.
Right.
There's a penthouse up at the same level, but it's set way back. And on the other side, they're down 1 story below us. But again, because of the parapet, I think is why you don't see much of what we're doing, even from those angles. And just another Google Earth view of it. This is the original front construction drawing. So I guess they did have these grills on the front.
I don't think what's there now is the same though. The drawing doesn't quite look the same.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It's sort of similar, but it's different. So I'm not sure if they're original or not. You know, we don't really have a need for them, but we could replace it if that's your preference. But of course, we would just restore this opening the way it was. But otherwise, it's pretty much exactly what's been built.
Yeah. The grill, sorry.
Yeah, no, here's the rear elevation. Here's the downspout. Just right where they,
you're right.
You know, and that's the old opening. And this, I think this thing notes a metal fascia or iron fascia. That's what it says. So it was originally iron, which is peculiar. But there is a lot of steel inside the house too. So they were fine.
Well, and as you point out, the rear has been altered with the addition of that oriel.
Right.
Probably sometime between 1922 and 28, based on the Bromley maps.
Yeah, that seems right. And then this will just get restored, and then the garage, this will lower this sill and create the garage door opening in that existing opening. So it's kind of convenient. Oops, sorry. The proposed front and rear yards, again, this is just the basement floor plan showing the area well being removed, the window installed. And in the back is the proposed driveway down. We would come in relatively flat. There'd be a slight slope down on this side. So we have an outside parking space, and then we're proposing a brick wall, a low brick wall with an iron top to enclose a small private garden here and a gate that goes out, steps out onto this side. So this garden is down at this lower level of the driveway. And then all of it brick paved. You know, border it, and then a herringbone brick, and then brick the sidewalk. Back here, we've got a nice little plant bed along the westerly edge, and an opportunity for a couple of trees in the center, or actually one here. I'm sorry, these are all shrubs between us and the neighbor, and then the whatever we need to keep of that retaining wall, we would keep. So we'll lower it. But follow our proposed grade, which is not quite as steep as this one. And then same thing on this side, there'll be a brick retaining wall underneath this edge, meeting up with our brick garden wall here, and then the restoration of the back door. Here is the proposed front yard. There is a concrete sidewalk here, which I find hard to believe was original.
That's Guy. Every one of the limestone houses on that block has a concrete entry.
Really?
That's what they were doing. And that, you know, I have to say, I think you really need to keep the concrete. It seems so strange, but replacing it is not consistent with what they were doing.
I mean, at a minimum, it would be nice just to do a simple granite paver, you know, that's similar to the facade.
It would still, it would be jarring compared, I mean, the house right next door, which is another limestone. I think it seems odd to argue for concrete, but I've done it before. I think you really need, from a historical standpoint, and from the way it compares with the other comparable streetscape, I think that's what you want to keep.
Well, I guess that's up to you folks. So it just seems peculiar to me to keep it. The again, the front yard's now a flat front yard. We would have a new iron fence that goes in and with a gate to get in here, and then the hedge that's there would remain, and then new plantings inside and a new magnolia.
And
Or
the
actually,
garden
we
club,
proposed a peach blossom there. I'm sorry.
yeah, the garden club has suggested a saucer magnolia. Do you have any problem with that?
No. Oh, yeah, we did propose a magnolia, right?
Yeah, but it's a saucer magnolia, which
Yeah,
is a
that's fine.
particular kind.
Yeah,
so.
that's fine. And then up at the top floor, this is the 5th floor. So you're seeing the 3 dormers. The center dormer, we would replace the window with a door that matches, same rail and style profile, just with a panel below. And that would get us out onto this wood deck, and then a metal railing on the inside of that balustrade, and we would restore that whole balustrade. We would
And
end the deck
can
right
you
here.
match the pickets so that they don't show between the balusters?
Yeah, we can come close to that.
Yeah, good.
Unfortunately, yeah, we need to be no more than 4 inches, gaps,
Yeah.
but it won't be noticeable at all. It'll be very delicate. We can go to a 3/8 bar, so it's very hard to see. And then I'm sorry. This is the existing roof plan. There was a deck here. I actually have some old photos that show the deck. But it was removed, and the project, this house was in the middle of a renovation when my client purchased it. I'm not sure why, but they stopped sort of halfway through the alteration. So they were rebuilding this, and they were going to put the deck back, apparently. Regardless, this is the penthouse that's there, and that will come off. And then all the junk that's up there will go away. And then our proposal is to build a railing here at the back edge of this chimney. And then the same thing in the back. Actually, we're not going all the way back to the chimney. I misspoke. We're stopping that short, and there's a new skylight going back here. All of this was mocked up, the skylight, the railings, both sides, the head house. And as Joe said, it's very difficult to see it from anywhere. You can see some of this from the far side sidewalk on Commonwealth Avenue.
Yeah.
And I think I have the mock-up photos in here if you want to see them. And we're proposing a 3-inch deep live roof, a green roof on the front of the deck, forward of the deck up to the edge of the roof that you won't see from anywhere, just so it's a prettier view from up on top. And then the wood deck. And then this is the head house, so it slopes from here up. And that's what it looks like on the side from the east side. So it slopes up, there'll be skylight on it, and then flattens out, and you walk out. And then the elevator head house is behind it here, which you see in this view. This is from looking from inside on the deck, looking at the head house, and there's the glass door, wooden glass door that got out onto the roof deck. So it's a whole lot cleaner up here. We've got heat pumps tucked in this corner back here. These were mocked up as well. And then one smaller heat pump that goes into this corner, tucked in that little corner. And again, that's not visible. And then that pipe rail goes away. We can just take that off. And then this is the cross section showing the sight lines. Again, you don't see anything from the alley. It's because it's a very tall building and very steep. Here you can see the side wall of the garden. So this is the brick wall with some ironwork detailing. And it's similar to what's in the front, and then the front yard fence here. And then you see the head house in section, and then the elevator head house here, and then the skylight. So it's all lower and smaller than what's up there. This is the box that's up there now. You can see it dotted in. And again, from the far side of the mall, you can barely see a little bit of the railing. And then not from the mall, from the far side of Commonwealth Avenue, the far side sidewalk. And then I don't believe you actually see the head house from the far side, but you do see a little bit of that railing from the very far side. And then the existing and proposed front elevation. So you're seeing the stuff that's up there now, and then what we're proposing, that's the new head house sloping back, and then the new iron fencing. It's got a nice simple ring detail, which actually you find in a lot of the metal work that's there now in the front door and in these balconies. And then a similar detail on the fence here. And again, it's back and forth as to whether we should take that off. I think we actually applied to remove this one and not build a new one there. So that's actually how the application reads. And then of course, there's just a restoration, replacement of the windows and new intercom and, you know, that business.
Did
I'm sorry.
Sorry, just ask a couple questions about the front?
Sure.
I've already interrupted you several times and I apologize.
That's all right, Tom.
The grill on the door and the 3 grills are on the piano nobile windows. Turns out those were originally bronze. They were advertised in a Boston Architectural Club catalog. And my question is, have they been painted green, or is that the actual verdigris on it?
The door is not green. It looks like the door was painted.
Yeah.
The ironwork, but or whatever it is, if it's bronze, it looks like the bronze here is the oxidation.
It is? Okay.
I think. I mean, I can go back to the photo and show you.
Yeah. What are you proposing to do? Because the door and the 3 grills should match. And if they've been painted, that's one thing. But if it's verdigris, you don't want to disturb that.
I guess I would have to look closer at it. I assumed we would leave the oxidation as it is, you know.
Yeah, because the plans say paint. They say repaint, and I didn't get close enough.
Yeah, our
to
intent's
get-
not to repaint this. It's just to
Okay.
repaint this. Because I'm assuming I assumed that was painted iron.
Yeah, no, it's actually, I did too, and then came across this advertisement, which shows that it was actually bronze.
Interesting. I'm
Yeah.
not sure why it's this color.
Yeah, I know.
If it's not painted. Clearly
Yeah,
this is
well, it probably
oxidized,
is.
you know.
Yeah, and somebody may have painted the grill and not the upper ones.
But I haven't been out there, you know, on the scaffolding or anything to actually
Yeah.
get close to this. So I'd have to
It
figure
looks
out
it looks like
what's going on.
verdigris.
Yeah, I think that I would have guessed that that's what it was.
So,
It's just
so if
oxidized.
it is, I wouldn't repaint it.
Okay. Yeah, no, agreed. We could clean it,
Yeah.
which is probably the best thing to do, and you know, get it back so more natural. And if we can do that with this front ironwork, I would do the same thing. If it
Yeah.
turns out to be
Yeah,
bronze,
that
you
would
know,
be great.
just restore the bronze. We could even seal it, I suppose, or just let it oxidize, you know. Anyway, that's a good question. I hadn't thought about it.
And the only other one was with respect to the fire alarm signal beacon. Is there a way to, while complying with what the law requires, to get it a little less visible? I know it's supposed to be visible, so that's sort of an oxymoron, but.
Well, the reality is that the fire department doesn't pay any attention to what the law says. I hate to say that, but they pretty much just tell us what they want.
Okay.
Let me scale this back down. I don't know why this is so big. There we go. I can go back to that elevation. We can propose it wherever you think. I'm not sure where else you put it. Obviously, what the fire department wants is they want it highly visible.
Right.
So they're always fighting with us to make it as absolutely visible as we can make it. I'm not sure where to put it. I wouldn't put it on the column. I wouldn't put it.
No, I think you've got it on. I think you've got it on the stonework now. And if it could go back a little bit, I don't know. May not be possible.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where else to put it. You know.
Yeah.
They're gonna want it either tucked in here, or I mean, ideally they'd want it right there.
Yeah.
So, obviously I'm with you. I will try to make it as, difficult to see as we can. They want to put a sign that's 3 foot by 3 foot to identify the fire department connection.
Yeah.
I mean, we struggle with that. But yeah, we'll do the best we can to hide the thing. But anyway, on the back, it's just replacement of all the windows. If you think it's better, we can move it over to the side. This is where it was historically, and it works. So I would have just replaced it right there, you know, the downspout. And then the rest of it, we're going to copper clad.
How could I advocate moving something that's historic?
It's a historic downspout. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But the rest of it is pretty straightforward. Just a painted panel door is a sectional door. It looks like it's a pair. And it's got recessed panels and collection molds on it. We were gonna, our proposal was to put a precast concrete lintel in over whatever the hell we find behind it. And I know it was noted to be iron, so we can put back a painted metal lintel cover, whatever the hell that is.
How would that work with the lintel above it? That's sort of what you need to.
Well, I think they both are.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever you do on one, you probably have to do on the other.
Oh yeah, for sure. We would do that to both. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm expecting that there's a steel beam behind that. And that's what they did. They covered it with a metal cover because it's a steel beam. There's a lot of steel work inside the house, according to the old structural drawings. So
Guy, how tall are the new doors on the lower?
They're 7.5 feet, I think. Something like that. We're working out the grades as to how that's going to work, because we're trying to get down as low as we can, but not make it too steep. But we're keeping the height of the lintel. We're just dropping the sill to,
Yeah, I'm just noticing that even in the original, that lintel, the lowest lintel is a little shorter than the one above.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's not quite as tall. This one's a taller lintel for what, who knows? They probably, with all this stuff, they cared not a whole lot about how it looked on the outside. It was just functional for them. So whatever reason, there's probably a bigger steel beam here, because it's picking up all this masonry, and this beam was only picking up this little bit of masonry, so they just covered it with whatever they covered it with. I've never seen a metal cover over it, but
yeah, it seems odd.
But again, we can do it in precast and color it so it looks like the sills and match it.
Yeah, that to me that would make sense, since it's you're making changes anyway.
Right.
Yeah, and would you ever consider making the lintel, the lowest one, the same height, just to sort of streamline it out?
Yeah, we could. Or yeah, I mean, that doesn't bother me, because it sort of makes sense that this is bigger, because it is picking up more load, but it's peculiar. It's peculiar. And then this is the version color rendered. So we would just clean up the bay, paint all this stuff, and paint the windows. And there's a copper enclosure on the skylight base that'll weather, and same thing with the head house is copper clad. So that's eventually going to weather. And then we're replacing the downspout and repairing a lot of the other stuff up there. Most of the copper work is getting replaced on this, other than the bay, the neo-real. And that seems to be in decent shape. And then we're replacing the lights and, all that business. And that's pretty much it. We've got all the details here. The fence details, kind of a cute ring detail with some smaller rings that live inside. They're sort of scrolls that meet each other. That's kind of what you see on some of the metal work outside. And then, some of the other details. And that's the intercom, much nicer than what's there. Door hardware.
Looks like mine.
Lamps, same kind of, all that business. So that's basically it. It seems like a lot, but it's, not a lot that you see.
It's nice to see the building getting restored.
Yeah, it needs it badly. It's really kind of falling apart on the outside.
Yeah, it's a beauty.
Yeah, it's a gorgeous building.
Any questions, commissioners?
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, great. Let's go to public comment then.
I'll just share my screen and.
You want me to stop sharing?
Yes, yeah.
Okay,
All
there we
right.
go.
So thank you, Joe. Members of the public will now have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comment on applications and discussions. To do so, please raise your hand in the application via the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may press *9 to raise your hand, or you may send your questions to staff via email at backbayac@boston.gov. Public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person and should be focused on a project's exterior architectural features, which includes landscaping. Issues related to use, street traffic, and noise are outside of the commission's purview. Lori Thomas.
Yes. Hi, Guy. We had a lot of comments and thought about this amazing restoration, and I will cover the landscaping and some of the fencing and paving issues, and Serge will address the comments of the building. My first question to you is whether you're installing an irrigation system for each of the gardens.
Yes.
Excellent. That's so important when you're putting in new trees. We liked the new fence design, but we noted that the posts should be drilled into the curb and not bolted onto the curb.
I mean, the problem with drilling it into the curb is that it eventually oxidizes and splits the curb.
I see.
You know, it's just not a great way to do it. You know, we've done it. I can't tell you how many times we've pulled them out and replaced it or repaired it because of that. So it's just, you know, water gets in there, unfortunately, and you know, over time, and it oxidizes and rust jacks it and splits it.
I see. Leave that to the commission. Moving on, the dogwood tree out front is diseased and dying, so the tree committee found it to be a good candidate for replacement, noting that it is missing bark and major limbs. Replacing it with a large caliper magnolia was a good plan, but as discussed, we would love to see a later blooming saucer magnolia instead of a Leonard Messel, since this garden is on the sunny side of Commonwealth, where people come from all over the world to look at the saucer magnolias that are blooming. We gave you a specific recommendation for a later blooming one, because when we have a late frost and it kills all the magnolia buds, that means there is no bloom. But if you have a tree that blooms a week or two later, it means we get that spectacular effect again. We also noted that your hedge has both Japanese holly and boxwood in it, so we would suggest that you take a look at that and choose one species for uniformity. In the rear, we're excited to see a larger caliper tree going back there, but we would like to suggest something larger than a redbud to give more canopy. Something like a silver linden or a tulip tree would be better than that for us. Back there, that's my alley, so I know that we've lost a tremendous amount of canopy back there. And our gardeners noted that your camellias will probably need more sun to thrive in that area. And I think that's everything I had, and I will leave the rest to Serge. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Serge.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. My system didn't say that it was. So we did study a little bit the grill and found the same conclusion that Commissioner High did highlight, is that the grill is likely bronze on front. And what we did find is the patina would actually be dark brown originally for a period of time, but over the long-term period, if it's rich in copper, which probably is, it would turn green. So there's a likelihood that it was painted, the door in front was painted actually because it was turning green, but the top was not. We are curious of, since the top portion will be recladded copper, do you plan to use accelerating agent for the patina to do? Because if not, the top will be shining copper and the bottom would be patina verdigris. So that would be one question that I have here. On the back, I have a quick question regarding the small garden fence. There is an enclosure there. Is this enclosed on 3 sides or only the east and the north side? It's not really clear for me from the drawing exactly. We see posts, but we don't know exactly what is fully connected with either grill or with brick. So that is another piece that we would like. Most of the other comments were already covered by the commission regarding the downspout and the rest of the back of the sill and so on. Thank you.
Serge,
Thank you, Serge.
I'm not clear on your comment about the copper. What copper are you speaking about?
The copper on the top. Right now, you're going to reclad completely the copper on top of the balustrade.
Okay, the dormers and the mansard.
Yes.
Right.
So all of these will be recladded, and now these will be basically. Right now, these are green verdigris, and they will actually now become completely shining copper.
Right.
And I'm just curious if you're planning to use an accelerating agent here or a coating to make sure that it can come back to in harmony with the rest of the front.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We've never been very successful at catalyzing the oxidation process with copper. When we've done it, it's turned a lot black and not so much green. There's all kinds of schoolyard ideas about it. I do know a couple people that might be more knowledgeable about it. One good thing is that it's sloped, so it's going to get a lot of rain.
True.
And when it does oxidize much faster, and so will the dormer roofs. So it will turn green in our lifetimes, and maybe sooner. But we can look into that. I've tried it in the past, and it's just never been very successful. That's my only concern. What was the other question?
The garden fence,
Oh, the garden,
the brick
yeah.
garden fence. Which sides is it?
All three sides are brick enclosed, and then there's a gate in the west-facing section, an iron gate. But it'll be brick on three sides with that with the ironwork on the top.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The Sue Prindle. I have a question about the gratings in the back. Is your garden is at a different level than the parking areas then? Is that correct?
The garden is lower.
Okay, so that it's down at the bottom.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wasn't clear on. It looked a little bit like it was up on sticks.
Yeah, no, it's a little lower. It's not quite at the basement floor level. You're going to go in and then down a couple steps once you go in, but it's
okay, because the view from the alley looked odd to me, and I couldn't quite read it. But.
Yeah, what happens is the gate will open onto the ramp down. So it's at sort of a little bit higher than the parking garage level.
Okay. Yeah. If I'm walking down the alley, I see the brick wall with the iron on top.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to get a clarification.
All right, Kathy, I'm not seeing any other public comment. Oh, Kathy, you're muted.
Whoops, sorry about that. Let's go back to the motion.
Okay. Move that it be approved, the project be approved with the provisos that the front door grill and the grills on the second floor windows be restored to the extent possible, to be approved by staff. That the fire alarm is to be located in as inconspicuous a location as possible, to be approved by staff. That the entry walkway is to remain concrete. That a 2.5 caliper or greater saucer magnolia will be planted in the front yard, and that final front and backyard landscaping be approved by staff after consultation with the Garden Club of the Back Bay. And that approval of the introduction of the rear garage bay is approved in view of the fact that the rear facade has been previously altered, and the garage bay is being inserted within the existing masonry by lowering the sill while preserving the original head and side jamb conditions.
Tom, one question. The fence in the front, was that something you wanted just to work out with me and the garden club, or?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
We would add that the front fence be reviewed by with the garden club, the part of the landscaping and the fence.
Yeah, the question is the installation into the curbing.
Right.
The detail, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I would definitely add that as part of that.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. We're almost through. Thank you, Guy.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You can.
Have a good night.
All right.
And
For the
Kathleen, who's the handsome guy behind you?
What was that?
Who's the handsome guy behind you with the dog?
Oh. One of our lower piano models. So.
There you go. All right. Anyway,
I love it.
I'm always curious, but anyway, have a good
Yeah,
night.
there he's gonna ask a question, Guy. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. Take care.
All right.
So let's move forward with the administrative review. Do we have a motion
And
to
I just want to
approve?
add that the application for 148 Commonwealth Avenue, which was for a chimney top exhaust fan, has been withdrawn.
Thank you, Joe.
Mhm.
Motion to.
So do we have a? Thank you, Rob.
I second.
Okay. Kathy Connor,
Yes.
Tom High,
Yes.
Tom Nair,
Yes.
David Sampson,
Yes.
Rob Weintraub,
Yes.
and Lisa Tharp.
Yes.
Okay, very, very, very quickly. I think if you haven't already, you'll be receiving an invitation. We're going to be having a commissioner celebration at our new office space at 26 Court Street, and that's going to be taking place on Thursday, February 12th from 5:30 to 7:30. So I hope you can all make that. And then I want to thank all of you for, this was one of our longer hearings that we've had in a while. So business is picking up. But I want to thank Lisa. I know you're in a different time zone in Europe. So thank you for hanging in there. We appreciate it.
Wow. Thank you,
Thank
Lisa. That was
you.
terrific. And you made so many great contributions, which we
Oh,
appreciate
thank you.
as well.
Happy to help.
Yes. Of course. If I can add, Joe, to the staff updates, it'll be so great to see everybody live and in person after how long? So I
Yes.
hope as many of you put that on your calendar as possible, because it'd be great to see you all in person.
Amen.
Okay, and any other staff updates, Joe?
No, that's it.
So we just have a motion to
Adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second.
Unless you want to hang out, Tom, a little longer.
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Have a
Yes.
lovely evening.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.